you usually don't get to be with us, would you like to do the pledge or the prayer today?
Oh, the which one?
Oh, I thought for sure our attorney would be there. Brian.
Thank you. I said hi, and I waved at me, but I'm like, he was watching her and
We've dealt with a lot of cancer in my family, but not with kids.
Oh, it is. You have to be there for that. We thought sure it'd be here yesterday or today, because it's been 2 weeks. Didn't come. Gotta keep your microphone.
Okay. We'd like to welcome everyone to our Planning Commission meeting tonight on February 25th. We will begin tonight with an invocation by Commissioner Thompson, and then Commissioner Doan will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we come before thee this evening as members of the Planning Commission and members of the community. We're so grateful for the opportunity we have to be here and for the opportunity we have to live in such a beautiful city and beautiful state. We ask thee to bless those that protect us and keep us from harm. And now as we go into this meeting, we ask that we may be open to the things that we hear and be able to make choices that we believe are best for the city. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
will the audience please rise and join us for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
We'll begin tonight with an audible roll call of the commissioners. Sharon Call,
Here.
Mike Marchbanks, and Rob Callis are both excused from our meeting tonight. Ryan Doan,
Here.
Steve Johnson here, Scott Thompson,
Here.
Jared Showers,
Here.
Karen Danielson.
Here.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is an approval of our minutes from our meeting on January 28th, 2025. The commissioners have received these minutes beforehand and have had a chance to review them. Do I see any corrections, or do I hear any corrections or additions that need to be added to these minutes?
No.
I didn't see any.
I'm good.
Okay.
You want me to make a motion?
Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is a time for public comment. This is if anybody's here as a member of the public that would like to comment on an item that is not on the agenda. This is a time for the public to comment. Is there anybody here for that purpose?
Do we have an agenda that we can see?
There are printed agendas in both sides. If you'd like to, as you come in, are they on both? Or I know they're over on this side. If you want to look at the agenda quickly, and then I'll ask again if there's anybody that'd like to comment.
That many people, you must mention that this is on the agenda.
Yes, but so the general plan amendment for the street master plan is on the agenda. I'm assuming that's what, and then there's 2 items regarding Mazer Academy that are on the agenda. So once again, I'll call, is there anybody who would like to make comments for an item that's not on the agenda? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to item number 4. And I'll just give a little brief outline of how public hearings go here at the Planning Commission, so you understand the process and what we're going to do. So item number 4 is a public hearing for a general plan, street master plan map amendment. That's there's been a request by Dave Gardner, who's the applicant, and if Dave wants to come up, and anybody else that's going to help represent you, you're welcome to have them come sit with you during the presentation. What we're going to do is we're going to have city staff present to us. We will then have the engineer and talk about the traffic study. Then we will have the applicant present any information that they have. The commission will ask questions of both staff and the applicant during this time and gather information. After that time, I'll ask for a motion and the public hearing will be open. And then at that time, we will hear from the public. We'll have you come up one by one. Please remember, and I will reaffirm these rules when you come up, when we start the public hearing, but when you come up, you address the commission. We don't talk amongst ourselves, back and forth. It's the commission will ask questions, you will address the commission. We do ask for a sense of time that we don't continually, in a long way, repeat the same item. You can say, I agree with this, I feel strongly about this, but we don't need to hear the same set of facts multiple times. Okay, and so that's how the public hearing will go. Once we've heard from the public, we'll close the public hearing. The commission will then deliberate upon the things that we've heard. And because of the nature of this, we will then make our recommendation. Well, there'll be a motion to make a recommendation to the city council, and we will vote on that. So that's the procedure. So we'll go ahead with the presentation from city staff, then we'll go to the city engineer, and then we'll hear from the applicant. All along the commission, if you have questions, feel free to ask either staff or the applicant.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, commissioners. It's great to be here with you. I'm going to give a very similar presentation that was given on January 6th at that meeting. I'm going to go through it fairly quickly, but there are quite a few slides. So if you have questions, please stop me and we can discuss those as we go through it. So just as a history, kind of an overview, like you said, we are here because an application has been submitted with the city to amend the street master plan of the general plan. So every city is required in the state to have a general plan, and they're required to have a transportation circulation plan. And part of that traffic circulation plan is to have a map that shows current and future roads, road classifications, how they coordinate with other communities. Pleasant Grove has a very similar map to Lindon City. They call theirs the roadway master plan. And both Lindon City and Pleasant Grove show that 1000 South connection on their general plan maps as part of their general plans. So this map shows the boundary line between Pleasant Grove and Lindon with that red line. You can see the 800 north, what we call 800 north. It would be 1000 south in Pleasant Grove. You can see about 15 feet of that is in Lindon, and majority of it is in Pleasant Grove. But then as you head south with that road, it would be all in Lindon City. This would be, if you go from 650 east, this would be the alignment between Lindon's 400 east and over to 650 east, how it's been planned between the two communities. In 1963, there was an effort by the state of Utah to coordinate with all the other communities and inventory all their different streets, and their planning for future streets, their lengths, their conditions. You know, at that time, the county population was just over 100,000. And so they were really looking at, and cities were separated a lot more, and so they were seeing how they create more of a circulation plan throughout the different communities. And that's what this discusses, is how a circulation system was provided throughout the different communities in the county. As part of that, a map for Lindon City was created and adopted in our first general plan in 1968. So this here shows a map that at that time connected between Orem, showed a proposed road connecting between Orem and Pleasant Grove. It was at that time showed it as an 80-foot arterial street. That was in 1968. It came up with different road profiles, and this was the portion that in Lindon City that was identified. Again, talks about circulation and connecting with other communities and how those interrelate with each other. This was our 1976 map, and you can see we did a little bit more coordination with Pleasant Grove and Lindon there on our boundary. The line was adjusted a little bit. You'll see that theme through the different maps. This was the 1995 map, and this is where you first start to see 1200 East constructed. In 1992, there was a subdivision plat that was recorded for this development here, down here in the southeast corner. About 1994, 1200 East started to be constructed in that area. You can see some changes in the map up here on the northeast corner. In 2000, additional roadway was constructed as part of different subdivisions heading north on 1200 East. You can see some changes on that northeast corner. This was kind of the first map where Lindon City started to look at more circulation throughout our whole community. You can see 700 North here shows up as a proposed road. There's also I want to go back. The 95 map is where that starts to show up, is for the first time as 700 North. You can see around the freeway interchange how it was proposed. And so they started thinking more generally, how does circulation happen as you look at 200 South, Geneva Road, State Street, 700 North, 1000 South, 1200 East at the top, Geneva Road, 2000 West. So starts to look at those. And then between 2000 and 2011, Lindon City hired an engineering company to look at what would the road look like if it was planned, what would be the alignment up here, how would it be planned, what would be the design. And so this 2011 general plan map shows more that alignment and how the road appeared. And each time these maps, so that in 1995, going back to 1968, 1976, 2000, 2011, these were all adopted as part of a general plan that the city council looked at each time. And then 2023, this was our most recent map that was adopted. Again, showing the different classifications of roads, whether they're arterial roads, connector roads, local roads, those types of things. So this is our current map that we're going off of that's been requested as an amendment. This is our general plan. Like I said, the state requires that we have a traffic and transportation circulation plan. As part of that, we adopt different goals and recommendations. It calls out what is a collector street. It provides for traffic movement between arterial and local streets. These roads are identified as either major or minor collectors. So that road on 1200 East, that's considered a collector road that we're discussing tonight. It calls out that we have a segment of a major collector road at 1200 East that hasn't yet been constructed. One of the goals was, it says to coordinate land use and circulation planning to provide development opportunities supported by major transportation routes and interchanges within and around the Lindon city. So looking at your different classification routes, how those function and coordinate. Some policies they look at and ensure that city retains overall control over the design and location of major street system within future growth areas, require adequate thoroughfare systems for future growth and designate sufficient rights-of-way prior to land development, secure rights-of-way prior to or concurrent with land development, require traffic impact analysis when deemed necessary by the engineer. Those are two items that come into play with this. If you look at this next slide that I put together, these are, as part of that circulation system, these are the areas in red are portions of roadways that have either been dedicated to Lindon City by through a subdivision or that have been acquired either by Pleasant Grove City or Lindon. This section here, Pleasant Grove just entered into an agreement last week at their city council meeting to purchase this portion that'll be the future 1000 South from that property owner. So you can see the different segments throughout the community that are part of this transportation network. Then finally, last implementation measure from the general plan, design and install local streets to discourage through traffic in residential neighborhoods, directing traffic to higher capacity roadway classifications. So, we don't want to see cut through traffic on local residential streets. They need to be coordinated to collector streets, and as identified on our map. So other than moving traffic, why was 1200 East and 800 North planned? First is a utility corridor. If you look, this is one of our utility maps. This dotted blue line shows where we would like to see a new culinary water line. And the purpose of that is that these neighborhoods see low pressure, and so we would like to connect that. You can see the dotted lines there that connect that water line into those neighborhoods. Those utility lines would go under a new street. Same with pressure irrigation. You can these areas have low pressure, and so you can see how those utility lines would go under the road there. Public safety and fire break. We're always looking at how long it takes for calls for service. How can fire and police get from one area of the community to another? This area would also, a road would also act as a fire break, being up on the foothills there. A couple other areas that will connect or are planned to connect into 1200 East is this road coming from Center Street to go up will connect into 1200 East, and then also connecting 140 North to 380 North at that point. One of the other considerations is, this Queensland Court development was built on a cul-de-sac with the anticipation that 1200 East would be connected further to the north. Our subdivision code currently says that you can't have a cul-de-sac more than 650 feet deep. And so if this road were removed all the way from 800 North to 200 North, that would create a 1,500-foot cul-de-sac for that townhome development. And so if you'll see when NOAA presents on the traffic study, one of the recommendations was to make sure this road connects over to that 380 North. Sorry, my mind just went blank. 380 North, I think. 380 North, so that one of the reasons is so that cul-de-sac isn't so on a dead-end street at 1,500 feet away. Construction challenges. There were preliminary road designs, and we'll go through those real quick, in 1995 that were done and in 2004. This one was done in 1995 because there was some development that was being proposed along this area in these vacant parcels. And so the city put some preliminary plans together. In 2004, the city also had an engineer put some, again, preliminary plans together that would show the road alignment. You can see it would connect in here with Pleasant Grove, go behind these homes, and then connecting into 1200 East. The reason why it's two separate roads is because of the topography and the slope of that hillside. You can see, we can take, for example, if you were to cut the road, just slice it, looking at it, there are definitely some topography issues you have to deal with, where, you would cut from one side, fill the other side, so you can have that straight road going through there. The road was also, again, these preliminary plans showed 25-foot lanes that would accommodate 2 lanes, and the reason for that at that time was, our engineer was worried about, if there was an accident on one side, how would you get to that accident if cars are backed up? And so, as we've looked at that now, we definitely think those lanes could be narrowed. You wouldn't need 2 lanes. You only want to see 1 lane in each direction, like the rest of 1200 East is planned. One of the other construction issues is when this subdivision was being proposed, there were different slope easements that were placed on the properties. The city council at that time reviewed different options, whether they wanted to see slope easements or whether they wanted to see a retaining wall. That retaining wall was very expensive, and so they opted at that time for the developer to put slope easements on the different properties. And so those are things that I know have been concerns to residents, and those are, as this plan moves forward, those are things we would have to look at. So this shows an aerial. We took some pictures with a drone, and then at the last meeting showed how with our best effort, we looked at that road and photoshopped the road in there. And so again, this is just conceptual, but it gives you an idea of what that looks like. So it would just be a continuation, same width as 1200 East, you see there to the south. So this is looking north to 1200 East. You've got the Queensland Court development right there, the townhome development. Again, this is looking south. You can see how those roads divide there. Sorry, north. Thank you. Now this is looking east on here. So, let's see. Sorry, here's the line. So the red line is the city boundary. There would definitely need to be coordination with Pleasant Grove City, where that road is. They have an existing road. We have this little S curve, and so we would need to coordinate with Pleasant Grove City. The plan is for the road that it would go here on the border, and then there's about 15 feet on our side of the boundary for that road. So you can see here. There's other issues. We don't own. Other issues, we don't own all of the corridor. There's property that's owned by the Forest Service. There's property owned by the Aqueduct Company. And so there's issues with property ownership there. You can see which parcel the city owns. This is owned by the Forest Service. The thought has always been that we would look at possibly trading this some property with the Forest Service for maybe some property up here on the foothills.
Is it okay to point out that there's a third piece you don't own, which is the Millet property?
Yes. The Millet property is this property to the north here of the, I can't remember the name of the development. I apologize. What's that? what's the name of, where, yeah. So the Millet property is located up here north of the Highlands at Bald Mountain development. You know, it's been a while, but we have reached out to the Forest Service. At that time, they thought it was feasible to exchange property, but it's been a while. We have reached out to them again, and I don't think we've heard anything so far. But you know, we're not actively trying to trade any property. This was from 2015 when we reached out to them the last time. And this Mr. Stansfield is no longer with the Forest Service at this office, at least. This is just pictures. It shows the area that's owned by the Forest Service. So again, it's property we don't own. Other issues is, again, roadway over or near the aqueduct. We would need to work with the aqueduct company on obtaining ownership for that area. We did sign an agreement with them a licensing agreement with them that would allow us to use it once the city had some ownership of that area. Here's that licensing agreement. Other construction issues is just the funding. This would have to be done over some time. We've always thought 3 different segments for this would be, the Queensland Court area over to 380 North. Second phase would be from 380 North over to 650 East. And then this last phase from 650 East to 400 East. A couple other things to consider. So the area behind let me go back. So the area behind the Highlands at Bald Mountain, this area here. So the city purchased this from the developer when this project was being proposed. We did that in about 2004. We bought that in 2009, and then Mountain Land Association of Governments reimbursed Lindon City the $430,000 that we paid for that right-of-way that was dedicated to us with that development. We've recently reached out to Mountain Land Association of Governments, and if we were to abandon that transportation use of this property that the city owns, then we would need to repay Mountain Land Association of Governments the appraised value of today's price on that. This area, this just shows the project, again, heading east. The property line is about the backside of this white vinyl fence.
Actually, Mike, you can see the stake right there in my house on the ground right by the basketball. That's actually where the roadway, clear to the right. See where the basketball is? There's a stake sitting right there, just so you can visualize that a little bit better. That's where the road goes to.
Okay. So looking this way, the road 1000 south would come through here, would cross the Murdoch Trail area here. That the trail would be reconfigured, and then it would come up through this area. You can see the slopes of this area. The road would go to the north of that fence there. And then as you're heading south, it would go on the backs where these fences are on this side. A couple other things that are issues. So if the city were to abandon this, take it off of our map, there's issues with each one of these crates, each one of these, what do we do with this corridor? It can't be built on. If residents want to purchase it, we would have to amend subdivision plats, we would have to amend the easements on there. And what happens if you've got one person that doesn't want to purchase the property? You're stuck with this little remnant lot up there that the city would have control over. Couple other things just to look at. This is 650 East. So let's say that the road is taken off our map or the road is moved further north, what happens to 650 North? Because this has always been just a temporary plan for that. So the road would need to come up and come to a T intersection. And you'll see on here, there's some pretty significant grade changes. Here's 650 East, this goes up to that Pleasant Grove Road. You can see the photo here. More than likely what would happen is we would have to build 650 East up with retaining walls and change the grade of that road to be able to come up, which puts retaining walls on both sides of these roads at that point. Again, we need to consider the utility corridor. This was a plan that showed that 650 East intersection and plans for utilities, like we talked about, that would connect into those areas. We do have some shared utility agreements with Pleasant Grove City for water and sewer and those types of things, and pressure irrigation on who supplies each of those utilities. I think that ends my presentation. So there's a number of things the Planning Commission will need to consider as you make that recommendation to the City Council. Noah Gordon, he's here as our city engineer to go through the traffic study. Let me just look at my staff report to see if I've left anything off. Yeah, last thing, let me go back to just on the Millet property, which is this property here. Lindon City has recently been reached out to by a home builder that is looking to develop here, and so if the road doesn't, let's say the Planning Commission, City Council decide to take this road off, there will be a road still going through here that will for this property to develop. Now, it would be pushed a little north, but there still would be a road.
I think it's important to say
let me finish.
Okay.
You're gonna have time for your
Thank you.
presentation. And so, so that is something to consider also, that there will still be a road in there, whether it's 15 feet more or whatever that is of where it's planned, but there still will be a road in that area planned for Pleasant Grove. So with that, I will turn the time over to Noah Gordon as our city engineer.
Thank you.
My part in this whole grand scheme of things is very brief compared to what Mike just went over. So, as you'll remember, there was a special kind of joint Planning Commission and City Council meeting on the 6th of January. And following that meeting, it was determined that a traffic study was warranted to kind of better understand at least that portion or piece of the pie. So the city staff was directed to solicit proposals. We solicited proposals from multiple qualified local transportation firms. And because we wanted really an unbiased opinion, so we did not give them our expectations other than kind of gave them a scope and said, what's the question that we were trying to answer? And from that proposal process, Hales Engineering was selected. The scope of the study that we gave to each of the proposers was to evaluate the traffic at build-out, which is essentially 2050 as far as the model they were using, which is the Wasatch Front Regional Council / Mountain Land Association of Governments travel demand model. This is kind of the standard model that is used for long-term traffic studies in this area. And we asked them to evaluate the impact on 400 East if 1200 East was constructed or is not constructed, as well as ultimately to determine if there is a need for 1200 East from a traffic standpoint. I just wanted to go over once again briefly that this is the street master plan. As you'll notice, there are a number of different street classifications on this map. I've zoomed in a little bit on here. And 1200 East is termed in our general plan to be a major collector. That gives fear and trepidation to many people. I've heard it referred to that this would be essentially constructing a Bangor highway. So just wanted to kind of give you an overview, a little better understanding of what size of road we're actually talking. This is the existing portion of 1200 East that is constructed, and that is the size that is on the plans and that would be extended, which is the 66-foot right-of-way, which means 50 feet of asphalt. So this is a kind of a pictorial representation of that width. So you would have one lane in each direction with a bike lane. It could be striped on there, as is shown on here. And then parking on both sides. The software I was using has a limitation. I couldn't put curb and gutter there, so it shows a 6-foot sidewalk. It would actually be a 4 or 5-foot sidewalk plus curb and gutter. That kind of gives you an idea of the size. To put that in perspective, I modeled this, the top is Bangor Highway, which is a 200-foot right-of-way with sound walls. Quite a bit larger facility than we're talking about here. So just want to kind of put that in perspective. We're talking one lane each direction is what they modeled and is what is on the master plan. So they first wanted to calibrate the model. The model is this travel demand model. They wanted to make sure that they had good, basically it's a garbage in, garbage out kind of model. So in order to make any model good, they wanted to calibrate it. So they went out and took 24-hour counts on the 28th of January. And they took them just north of the 200 South intersection on 1200 East and measured a 2,400 vehicles per day is what they calculated. And on 400 East, just south of 800 North, which was about 4,200 vehicles per day. And these agreed very well with the model that they were using, so they didn't really need to tweak the model and bring the numbers up or down from what the model was giving them. So quickly to go over the results, they modeled the build-out or 2050 condition with and without 1200 East connection. This does assume that there is growth along the Wasatch Front, obviously out in 2050, but did not anticipate any additional housing units or growth on the east side of the 1200 East corridor. So in other words, essentially no additional growth on the east side. This is kind of one of the crux of the model. And the green represents a decrease in traffic volumes, red an increase in traffic volumes, and gray basically means no change, little less than 2,000 trips per day. So what you'll notice is there, that red line on the east here is the 1200 East corridor. And then the top number is, on each one of these, is if the 1200 East is not built, and then the lower number is if 1200 East were to be built. So you'll notice, obviously, if 1200 East was not built, then they had no number at all, it's 0. It has 0,000 on there. And then if it is built, basically around 6,000 trips per day.
Can you read those for those of us who can't see that?
Yeah, and this isn't the greatest. It's kind of hard to see. I'll hover over it. But basically, I don't know if it works better with this. 6,000. It's about 6,000 trips there. They do have a larger number down here, which is around 7.1 thousand, so 7,100, because the traffic, or this neighborhood here was anticipated that it would come out on down here. And then north of that, it's about 5,000 trips a day. And then the other change is basically all the rest of these streets in green, if 1200 East were to be constructed, would actually have less traffic. So you're talking about on 400 East, drop of about 2,000, a little over 2,000 trips per day here. And then obviously here, quite a bit more, basically an increase of 5,000 trips per day on 1200 East. One interesting thing we asked them to look at, which they analyzed, was about 75% of the trips on 1200 East, were it to be constructed at build-out, would be cut-through traffic from Pleasant Grove and Orem. One of the questions we ask is how many of these trips are really trips for Lindon residents? The majority of the trips where this would be more of a connector between Pleasant Grove and Orem, the majority of the trips would be from, the 75% would be cut through. And we asked the question as well, if it were not to be constructed then, 1200 East, what is the proportion of trips that are cut through trips on 400 East? Because essentially, if 1200 East were to not be constructed, the traffic really, as it's happening right now, it cuts through on 400 East, and they said it's about the same 75%. So essentially, the trips shift essentially to 400 East. Traffic engineers like to use a measuring stick called a level of service as far as how they measure what feels comfortable on the road. So level of service A, and you can see the chart over here from the traffic study, basically means it's free flow. Think, driving down a local road in the middle of the night, there really isn't anyone to get in your way. Whereas level of service F, kind of like grades in school, is a failing grade where it means congestion. Traffic engineers like to say that a level of service D, although not a good grade in school, is acceptable as far as traffic. So there will be some delays, but they're acceptable delays. So pay attention to that. I put that chart in the corner of this next slide. This shows kind of our existing conditions in blue on both 400 East on the left side of the screen, 1200 East on the right side of the screen. So that's kind of the number of trips, once again, when they went out and measured it, and then also what the model's predicting. And then the 2050 or build out, no build, in other words, 1200 East is not constructed at 2050, is the orange. And then the gray represents if you built 1200 East at that build out condition. And what you really see once again is that there's a lot of cut through, a lot of trips on 1200 East because it's essentially, does not have as many driveways on it and is a more direct route to get over to, say, North County Boulevard 700 North. And this does anticipate that entire route, like Mike was showing, is constructed. So it gets all the way out to 700 North. So you can just see though, essentially there's a drop in trips for 400 East from 5,300 down to 2,500, and then an increase in trips, obviously, if 1,200 East is constructed. So, these are the results from the study again. Both 400 East and 1,200 East will continue to operate at better than a level of service D. Once again, if you compare those numbers, and it doesn't want to go back, so I'm not going to. But they're both less than that threshold for level of service D, which was that 9,400 trips. And 1,200 East is not necessary to construct in order to maintain an acceptable level of service, that level of service D in the future. If, however, more capacity were needed, if 1,200 East were not constructed, one option would be to essentially expand, which could be done through restriping of 400 East to 3 lanes. So in other words, instead of having maybe bicycle facilities on either side of 400 East and potentially eliminating on-street parking, you could instead have 1 lane each direction as well as a 2-way left turn lane, sometimes referred to as a suicide lane, in the middle of the road. With that, you get up to 11,000, so you could raise the capacity of the road. Since basically people who were trying to pull off into their driveway could kind of pull out into that 2-way left turn lane and wait for a break in the traffic. And this just shows essentially what I'm talking about there. You would eliminate the bike lanes or parking lanes, kind of either or, and have your center turn lane and then a lane in each direction. So that's a way to increase capacity if 1,200 East were not constructed to an increased capacity on 400 East. So quickly going through the conclusions from this traffic study, if the proposed 1,200 East connection is added to the roadway network, traffic volumes are anticipated to decrease on 400 East by 2,000 to 3,000 vehicles per day. And if it's constructed, then essentially 5,000 vehicles per day on the new portion and 7,100 vehicles per day on the existing portion. Once again, it's calculated that 75% of the vehicle trips would be cut-through traffic from Pleasant Grove and Orem, being diverted away from 400 East. And both the no-build and build scenarios basically keep things below a level of service D. And that, in essence, it is not anticipated that 1200 East needs to be completed from a traffic and operations perspective only. But if it's not constructed, they still recommended that we construct up to 380 north from to eliminate that large cul-de-sac and also provide additional connectivity from where it terminates presently, so.
Thank you. Does anybody on the commission have questions for our engineer?
Yes.
Okay.
One thing I noticed on this study is it doesn't take into account 200 East, which is also a major north-south artery, so it didn't take that into account. And the biggest glaring issue I saw with this one is it didn't take into account 1,000 north or 1,000 south Pleasant Grove, because once that goes through, that will wildly change any of these numbers. Does that make sense?
Yes, so we kind of limited their scope due to the budget and everything else, not looking at the city as a whole, but they did include 400 East. The model still, however, is looking at other streets. So while we're looking at 400 East primarily, because it's the furthest east, and it really does right now get the majority of the cut-through traffic through Pleasant Grove, but there is cut-through traffic on other streets.
Yeah. And I also noticed that what needs to be pointed out is that this traffic that's gonna be decreased on 400 or 200 or increased is in a residential area that wasn't designed for this type of flow. People live there, whereas 1200 is designed as a major collector, designed to bring people out of,
But
get
on
that
the
traffic
master,
off of.
in
the
fairness,
neighborhoods.
on the master plan, both 400 East and 1200 East are both shown as major collectors. So although, and I actually asked that question, I said, does the sheer fact that they have so many driveways along 400 East already mean it's less attractive as far as driving along it? And they said, really, the highway capacity manual, which is kind of the Bible for these, trips as far as how many trips can be put on a two-lane facility, already anticipates that there's driveways. Which isn't to say that if you're living on 400 East, you're gonna be loving life, right? Because of all the additional traffic potentially. But that's why maybe that two-way left turn lane in the middle of the road would be something we'd want to look at in order to let people get into their driveways.
Okay, thank you.
Any other? Commissioner Doan?
Yeah, so on the reading in the study, the traffic analysis for this proposed connection does not assume any additional development on the hillside east of 1200 East, which you pointed out. My question is it realistic to assume zero growth over there when ADUs are a possibility and land swaps have happened with Forest Service
Yeah, I guess the
elsewhere in
question would
country?
be, this body here, are you anticipating growth east of 1200 East? And my understanding is, right now, no, but never say never, right? I don't know, but this did not anticipate due to our current general plan not anticipating growth over there, but yeah, things could change.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Perfect. Thank you for your presentation. We'll now turn the time over to our applicant that he can present to the commission what he would like.
This every time do you know?
It should stay, if you push it to stay green.
Okay. All right, I think I'm good there. Hopefully, thank you, Mike. A couple of questions really quick for Noah. I think on the January 6th education meeting, when it was presented to us, my understanding was at that time, there was a current two-lane option that was 125 feet wide, because we were talking about 2 lanes at that point. So you kind of brought up the Bangor corridor comment, and I think that
I
came
think you're
from,
referring probably to the portion that splits due
Yes.
to, if you actually look at that, and maybe Mike can bring it back up, the actual amount of asphalt width is actually only 50 feet. It's 25 feet on each side as far as actual roadway. But the right-of-way is much larger due to, so when it was studied originally, from what I've been able to research, the consultant looked at two options, kind of, what if we were to take the road through essentially with 50 feet of pavement like a normal road, like 1200 East is further to the south, and Mike had those kind of cross-sections in there. They looked at that and said, if we were to do that, that means we're gonna have probably have retaining walls, essentially, is what it means, because you have such large cuts and fills. Then they looked at and said, okay, if we don't want to incur the cost of these retaining walls, what if we were to split it similar to what it does at that pinch point in Provo Canyon, where that has a really large retaining wall, and they split the road because it's pinched between the mountain and this, Provo River. So then they looked at that option just from a cost standpoint and said, what if we were to keep the same amount of asphalt? So you'll notice it's 25 feet. So it looks like 2 lanes. In reality, it's a 12-foot lane and it's a bunch of other, like what is that going to be? 13 feet of bike lane and parking. And that's where Mike's going back and we're looking at it. Does it need to be that wide? In talking to the consultant, it seems like, and I actually asked him, I said, why did you make it that wide? And he said, probably for the case of an accident. He actually couldn't remember, it's been so long, without researching his notes. But that 125 feet, that width is the right-of-way, essentially, that includes, the asphalt and then that large, 2-to-1 slope area in the middle to get it back down, kind of that tiered roadway.
Great. I just didn't want to make sure I was getting those facts right. It was at one point, we were talking about this total width at 125. And if I also remember right, that's because there's a retaining basin in there that we're having to potentially separate the roads around, and that the top option may not be an option because of that water retention basin, meaning that we would have to split the roads and it may be wider. That's not right, Adam? We have the option of the top option, where we're 65 feet as presented.
So that's 66 feet, but
66
66, 65. If that would require retaining walls. Bar none. That would require retaining walls on probably both the uphill and the downstream side. So,
Thank you.
Yeah, is it an option? I guess if money is no option, then it's an option.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make sure I had the facts straight there, because it seems like as we've talked, that's changed just a little bit. Obviously, we have these engineering plans as well, but thank you for clarifying. Am I missing something there, Adam?
Just for clarification, so that detention basin is uphill of where the road is.
Okay.
Even with this, when the road splits, those are still between the homes and the basin.
Okay.
So the basin, I don't think is impacted in any way based on the preliminary plans that were drawn.
Perfect. And then just one other comment, Mike, for you, I guess, is that you made the comment that you've had a conversation with the developer regarding the Millet property, and if I heard your comment correctly, it made it sound like no matter what, there is going to be a road put in right behind my house. And I just want to clarify that statement a little bit, that it's, my understanding is that Lindon City doesn't have anything to do with the Millet property, nor does Lindon City have any right to tell the developer in Lindon or in Pleasant Grove where the road's going to be. And I would just also say that I've seen some plans presented by Daniel Cardenas at Pleasant Grove, and the 3 or 4 that he presented to me does not have a road behind my house. So I just want to make sure that everyone listening understands that there are other options besides running a road behind these homes. Would you say that's a fair statement?
Yeah, it is on their master plan to have a road through there, and, they have a dead-end road right here that, when I've talked to Daniel, when, he said that the plan is for that road to continue, so.
Yeah, correct, but I think you were alluding to a developer coming in and alluding to the fact that if a developer comes in, according to the Pleasant Grove master plan, that could currently happen. But if I understood you right, you were actually saying if the road was removed, if this commission decided to remove the road, that there would still be a road there. And I just don't think that's
Okay,
accurate.
and I'm just going off the discussions I've had with Daniel, and he's told us that, hey, we're planning on still seeing that road go straight through.
Okay,
So-
yeah, so I guess if the commission will just take into consideration, obviously, that if a developer purchases that property and the commission and the council decide to remove this collector road, that Lindon City has nothing to say anymore about where those roads go and don't go. I just want to make sure that that's clear. I think we all understand that. Yeah, thank you. A couple other things that I would just say really quickly. I think Michael did a great job of presenting there. Is I didn't have a chance to do this before because when we came in the public hearing last time, we were coming in on a different topic because we haven't been heard. So I think that I first want to just thank the staff for, since that meeting, have been very responsive and have been very helpful in helping with the application process and getting to this point. Thank the council here for listening in multiple meetings, in multiple different individual meetings. I really appreciate that. I know you guys don't get paid a lot of money to do the work that you're doing, so very grateful for that. Also thank the city council. So something maybe we should have done at the beginning is just thank you for the opportunity to sit down here and have this discussion. I think even just this conversation that we've had over the last 5 minutes, you can see that for us as citizens of Lindon, knowing what we're dealing with, hearing us, being aware of the concerns that we have is a very major issue. And here, even here, where we've had education meetings and we just had another great presentation by Mike, there's still a lot of points that feel like we need to clarify them. So I appreciate the discussion because I think they are pretty material. So just on that note, I kind of just want to walk through one of the things that, as I was thinking about this meeting again today, I could not help but go through this agenda and the engineering plan and my application and think to myself, why am I fighting the Lindon City staff? We called this an analysis, and I don't think it's an analysis. I think it's me versus the staff, and I can't figure out why. We're all members of Lindon City, and I think here in these discussions, we've found some solutions that might actually be better for every citizen. It's also interesting to me that none of you ask about the people on 1200 East. So we talk about the folks on 400 East that are going to see 1,100 additional cars based on the graph. So we talk about those folks, but we just don't care about the people that are going to have an extra 7,000 cars running through their neighborhood on 1200 East. It also has come to my attention that we don't talk much about the people on the west side of Lindon, which is interesting because I've had more conversations with the people on the west side of Lindon than I have on the east side of Lindon. And they're very concerned that a lot of resources in Lindon are going to areas or projects that aren't applicable to them. And based on the findings, the way I read the traffic study, which we had the traffic study in 2023, which I pointed out from Pleasant Grove with the exact same findings. My understanding of this traffic study is pretty clear. If the level of service in the no-build scenario, the completion of 1200 connection will not be necessary to maintain acceptable levels of service. If more capacity is needed in the future, expanding 400 East to 3 lanes will accommodate 11,000 vehicles, more than is acceptable. The 400 East is wide enough to accommodate 3 lanes. Furthermore, it goes into this study and it says that all of the other tertiary roads in here are not seeing an increase in traffic. So for us that presented this application in the beginning, this was our suggestion, is that you're not putting this road in to service the residents of Lindon. You're putting the road in to service the residents of Pleasant Grove and Orem. And while that may be acceptable, I don't want 5,500 cars a day running behind my house. I don't think that there's any project along the entire east bench in the Wasatch Front that has that much road running across it from the research that I've done. The other thing that hasn't been presented by the staff is the cost. Luckily, we have some great projects going on right now on 1600 North to compare them to. So, and we have some great tools. You can use AI to get all the exact same tools that Hales Engineering and Architects has. So when you run the impact, whether it's a 66-foot road or a 125-foot road, you get a cost between $20 million and $35 million to build a 1.2-mile road that moves traffic potentially from 400 East to 1200 East and doesn't service anybody on the west side of Lindon. So it's really hard as an applicant in this process. The other thing that I've asked the city for, and maybe they have the answers now, is how many homes currently have easements, slope easements, and right-of-ways because of this road? And I haven't got the answer, maybe they know, but I know there's 18 in my neighborhood. So I just want to point out, it's not one home or one individual. My estimation is you're affecting about 150 homes currently. The other thing that's really interesting to me is that we point out that we're going to fund this project in 3 segments, and we do a traffic study for 2050. So you're willing to not address the utility corridor, the fire break, the emergency response, and the neighborhood collector streets for 25 years. But yet they're important. We just found out, in my opinion, that the traffic isn't necessary, but again, the staff feels like it is important, right, as a collector road. So if it's important, each of these things we pointed out, traffic patterns, fire break, utility, shouldn't we be actually funding those projects and getting them taken care of now and not 25 years into the future? Other questions I have, isn't it easier to put a utility in when there's not a road there? So for me, the utility issue comes along with the funding of the road. You're hoping that the funding of the road pays for the utility corridor. So is the utility important, or is it only important if we have the funding from the corridor and the traffic pattern? So there's a lot of things that, again, I feel like haven't quite been answered, and maybe we can answer them here today. But it sure feels like there's a lot of things that are still gaps. Another thing that I heard here tonight that I might have just misheard is that the Highlands at the Bald, where I live, there's some additional land that the city purchased in 2009, $439,000. MAG reimbursed $430,000 of those dollars. According to my conversations with the Mountain Land Association of Governments, if those properties, and we can figure out the easements and the right-of-way releases and other things to where property owners could potentially purchase those property dollars again, it's my understanding that those dollars aren't actually lost, that they can go back into the Mountain Land Association of Governments and be reassigned if Lindon City puts in the application and receives another grant for those same funds. So what might seem like a negative thing, that the city has to go through the work of releasing these dollars and having a public hearing and us potentially repurchasing those dollars, actually feels like a really positive thing, that we could reallocate dollars that are currently going nowhere to projects that may be accessible in the future. Also very interesting for the commission to know, I got a call from the Mountain Land Association of Governments 2 Mondays ago because of this project. I've gotten to understand the process a little bit. I'm not sure all the information I've gotten from them is very accurate. The mayor knows a lot more about this than I do. Depends on who you're talking to sometimes. But I got a call specifically letting me know that the Mountain Land Association of Governments funding was going to be completely different going forward because of President Trump's new policies regarding infrastructure and spending. I'm like, why are you calling me? But it's important enough for them. They knew that funding was a big issue for this project that we were dealing with here, and that important enough for them to call. Now again, 25 years in the future, who knows what that looks like and who's the president. But the point of the matter is we don't have the dollars. We don't have the dollars in Lindon. We don't have a need from what I can see in all of these studies. And quite frankly, it's affecting a lot more citizens. And I have yet to hear, we've had multiple meetings, I've yet to hear where the staff presents solutions for the citizens. Are there better solutions? For me, there's a lot of better solutions. Can we finish the funding on the Cortland project and up to 380? Yes. Can we find a resolution for this corner right here that we're looking at? It feels like yes. Can we be good neighbors with Pleasant Grove on 1000 South and work with them to potentially finish that project and development? Yes. But what I hear constantly is no. No, this is on the general plan. This is how it has to be. And so I'm hoping that the Planning Commission is starting to realize and understand that there are a lot of different solutions that are much better for the community than what's currently on the general master plan. So taking this all the way back to 1968, are we comfortable saying that what they presented and put on this master plan in 1968 is what we need today? I don't think so. We already know from the traffic study that there's a lack of need for connectivity. We know that we have enough space in Lindon that there isn't traffic, and arguably, as Commissioner Dohm pointed out, that we're not going to have more development and that we don't need more space for those traffic. In fact, most of us that live in Lindon would argue, how do we keep progress and things happening without increasing traffic? And it feels like to me, you put this road in, you're inviting traffic, you're inviting concerns, you're inviting $100,000 to $200,000 a year maintenance on a road that we don't necessarily need. The costs, again, I have yet to hear the city give us an estimation of what the costs are. So we've done a lot of research ourselves. You're talking $1.5 to $3 million per mile on the topography and the grading requirements. You're talking $500 to $1 million in environmental. Just so you guys are clear, I've had 3 or 4 environmental agencies reach out as well. They're concerned about the East Bench in Lindon. Several of them, spend a lot of dollars in Provo. Road construction, $12 to $24 million for that road construction. Drainage and floods, $1 million. You now have to move water off this road somehow and not into the communities. And possibly utility relocation, $1 million to $3 million for 1.2 miles worth of roadway. These are low estimations. Right now, that's about the same length that 1600 North is, and that's a $26 million project. And when you use the same maps that they're using and you use the UDOT resources, they estimate that this road on the bench, because of what they're dealing with topography and the things that Mike has already presented and switching, there's 3 pieces of land you don't own. They expect that it's going to cost $25 to $35 million. That's pretty significant. Environmental risks, community impact, we haven't talked about that yet. So there's a lot of things that we're hoping that the commission can talk about. Another one that was brought up in our education meeting was an emergency response. So I thought, wow, maybe Lincoln brought up a good point and we need to kind of address that a little bit. First off, we realized that a lot of our emergency response teams move from east to west. They don't move from north to south. So that's the first thing, and then you find out that actually Lindon, our teams do a great job. They actually have some of the best response is in Utah and even nationwide. So that doesn't seem to be a concern, something that was brought up before. Again, public sentiment and feasibility is one of those major issues, and I think just ultimately, I would just kind of close by this, and if there's additional answers that you guys have to some of those questions, I would just say, there's not, along with many of the others in the Lindon community, this proposal is affecting so many people, and maybe you're getting those comments, or maybe I'm just getting those comments, but I'm getting comments on a daily basis from people that say, thank you. Thank you for actually addressing this. We've been dealing with this for 4 years. We've been dealing with this for 5 years. We've been dealing with this, and it's all along this same issue, that there's not a a way to help the planning commission understand what the citizens are dealing with. So we just appreciate the time and the ability to communicate with you and your willingness to kind of read through the application. Each of you got the application correctly. I don't need to go through all those points. And then ultimately, just to ask you if you will proceed with the approval of removing this road from the master plan when you're considering your vote. I think that's kind of the main thing that I wanted to come and share. So thank you again for your time, your effort. Lindon City staff, thank you for the preparation.
Thank you for your presentation. We'll now ask the commissioners if they have any questions or clarifications they'd like to ask you before we open it up to the public hearing portion. So commissioners, is there anything you'd like to ask the applicant or to clarify?
You want me to go ahead? Well, a lot of this information I've read through and had, privileges to before. How long ago did you buy your home in that area?
Yeah, great question. So I bought my home in 2016, and it was the model home for the Highlands on the Bald. And most of us along that road on 770 North were given some, I would say, inaccurate information from the title companies. So we have, I think this has been asked before, can we go back to the title companies and say, hey, listen, you guys didn't, you didn't actually lay out, this is the right-of-way of Lindon City, and here's the slope easements and other things. Yes, we have that ability to go back to the title companies potentially. My title companies have been researching a lot of those. They found that on several of the plat maps, Lindon City missed a couple of the construction easements. I've personally never wanted to take the legal route to solve the problem when it feels like there's a better way to do that, if that makes sense.
One of the questions I had, though, at that time, though, were you not aware of the easement, but also of the road, the master plan road in 2016?
I was,
16?
yeah, so.
I'm just wondering.
Yeah, it's a great question, Sharon, I appreciate it.
Where this has been master planned for so many years, and it'll probably, it would be years and years and years probably before anything would be done on this road. Why is it coming up so much to the forefront right at this point when you've been into the home for 9 years?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. So 2 years ago, I don't remember, Adam, how long ago I put my basketball hoop in. 3 years ago, I laid some cement. I don't remember now. I laid some cement, not, yeah, 2018, I laid this cement for my basketball hoop down, and it literally is the first time where I got the information, and I actually appreciate it. Adam sent a letter and said, hey, listen, you've actually put your basketball hoop on Lindon City property. It's Lindon City's right-of-way. And I was like, whoa, hey, wait a minute. That seems kind of strange. Actually, reached out to Adam, making sure I was understanding this all. And it's literally the first time, Sharon, where it kind of clicked with me like, oh, do I actually understand these easements and right-of-ways? When I bought the house, they said, oh, yeah, there's a 3-foot easement on your backyard, and they're never going to put this road in, okay? If you ask everyone along that corridor, including the people that are in Pleasant Grove and 1000 South right now, every single one of them will give you the same response. They're never going to build this road, right? So as a home buyer, you're like, okay, well, if they're never going to build the road, what worry do I really have? Okay, so Sharon, the second part of your question, why now? Because Mike Millett, who's sitting back here, unfortunately, his father passed away last year. So Mr. Millett, Ken Millett, has been my neighbor for quite a few years and is adamant he would never sell that property. Okay, so I didn't really have a worry because Ken was always like, I'm never going to sell this property. Well, Mr. Millett passed away, and now the family has the opportunity now to potentially sell and develop that land. Right. So why now? Because if they sell that land, the developer is 100% going to use as maximum amount of my yard space as he can to put that road in. And so I love this picture because just so we're clear, where that basketball is and that stake is, that's actually the edge of the road. And so Adam suggested to me that I actually have my property survey, or maybe it was Mike. So I actually had my property surveyed and had the mayor come out and look at it when it was all laid out. Not only is that the roadway, but the slope easement literally goes to my back window, and the construction easement does in fact run through my house. So when you talk to a title company, guess what they want you to do?
Go ahead.
They want you to sue the city of Lindon for allowing a house to go in where the easements run through the property, and they want you to get all 8 of your neighbors to get into a lawsuit and a class action suit and sue Lindon City to actually say, hey, why'd you allow this property to go in when it goes through the physical property? And again, my approach has never been, I need to sue. It's, hey, I'm gonna go talk to Adam and Mike and see if there's some solutions for my backyard or something that I'm not understanding. So that's the reason now is because the Millett family, they may or may not, I have no persuasion over that. Nobody does. They can decide when they're gonna sell that property. But the way that it sits right now, with that road as it is on the general master plan, what will generally happen is, my opinion is, after talking to Pleasant Grove and everyone else, is that both cities want the developer to pay for the road. Okay, right? That's the smartest thing to do, is get the developer to pay for the road. So the Milletts hypothetically sell their property, and that roadway goes right in there. And it's run to where? Nowhere. It's run right up to the east side of that fence line, and it sits there until when?
Well,
2050, when you guys come up with funding to finish the rest of 1200 East? So as a citizen, it's like, why are we gonna build a garbage road to nowhere, force the Milletts and the developer to do that, when in reality, as you can see from the traffic study and what we've all been saying is, it's not needed. So doesn't it feel better to remove it?
But what you were saying before, though, is that the developer can actually put the road wherever he chooses to put it.
Yeah, but if it's there now and it's on the general plan now, the developer will 100% use it.
Okay.
The developer will use it because he gets 15 feet of my yard. Well, I shouldn't say it that way. The developer will use 15 feet of Lindon's land, right? And the other 10 feet all the way up there. No developer would give up that right of way if they had it available to them. So either I remove it off the general plan and you as a council help me remove it off the general plan, or that developer will use and take advantage of all of that property that Lindon City is willing to give.
Okay, so if it is taken off of the general plan, you may gain your easement, but other than that, how does it benefit you?
So I think the biggest thing is that there's now not a road running through my master bedroom. That's the biggest thing, right? The other thing that you've got to understand is that as I got into this, I realized it's not just me. There are 18 homes in that Highlands in the Bald neighborhood with this exact same problem.
Well, their easement doesn't, I mean, from what I understand, theirs isn't quite as
Severe.
There's quite a few
severe as
people
yours is.
here in the audience tonight that have tried to do.
It doesn't run quite like yours does, though.
Correct, yeah,
right?
the road doesn't run, but there are a few people in the audience here tonight that have already tried to use their properties in Lindon City, and because of the either slope easement or construction easements or right-of-way, they
Right.
cannot,
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
So it's not just, I guess I'm the representative of it now, but I don't think you realize this, I don't think you realize how many people potentially are calling me, asking me to continue to advocate for this all the way along this corridor. Think of the people in
understand.
1200 East, I don't know where you live.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of that.
Yeah, that
so
whole
that's not a-
neighborhood is like, are you kidding me? 7,000 additional cars coming through here?
Okay, I'd like to let others ask questions.
Just one question and clarification, if I can just, on the MAG dollars, and this is for, it was 430 when the city got the grant. My understanding is the city has, if they abandon this road, they have to pay it back at fair value. Do we have an estimate of what that fair value is?
I mean, we looked at some estimates previously, they were around 800,000 to $1 million, if I remember right. But again, those estimates were off of improved lots too.
Okay.
So
So-
it might be,
So there's another
Yeah.
cost there to the city if
Yes.
they're done, and we don't know what that is.
Well,
And
it's.
Is that a cost to the city, or is that a cost to the, so you're saying it's a cost to the city
the
because
city
they
has to
would
pay
have
it
to?
back.
Has to pay it back.
The
We have to
city-
take it.
The city has to pay it back to MAG. And then if the property owners buy the property for that value, then the city could be reimbursed. But those are.
Yeah.
Those are ifs.
Separate
Those are two
issues, yeah.
separate issues.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, those are two very separate issues. The city is required to pay it back. The owners, I'm sure the city would love to be reimbursed for that cost. But the city would be dealing with not one, but many, many different possible buyers there. And that's, whether
Yeah.
they could do that or not is a question. And so just getting that on the record is
Do you
part of the
think
problem.
the city's concerned about those properties being bought? I guess maybe that's I don't know who would answer that question.
Part of the presentation, though, is it is the way those lots are, if they aren't continuously bought, like the gray slashed out in this example, then we have landlocked, weird spots that the city owns that become liabilities to the city because they're not accessible and stuff. And so that's the problem is we start, it's just one of the issues that has to be
Yeah.
thought through.
And so there's already property right above the Highlands of the Bald that the city owns that is landlocked in that same condition. So we're not quite sure why adding more to it, or hypothetically, if somebody doesn't buy it, I think a lot of people may be interested in buying it and preserving the mountainside. But hypothetically, if they're not, there's already a corner above the Highlands of the Bald that Lindon City owns that has the same issues and liabilities. So we're not yes, there's a cost back to MAG, that's clear. But I would hope that the city would be in a neutral position because of interest in owning those properties. But
Okay.
yeah, good point.
So, Commissioner
I had a couple
Thompson.
questions. In response to Sharon's question, you indicated that, or they told us that it was never going to be built here. Who is they?
Yeah, well, one is the developer of the property of the Highlands of the Bald, who we bought our house from because it was and again, they're selling a house, right? So they're gonna say anything they can to sell a house to ease your concerns that there might, quite frankly, had I done the survey that Mike and Adam said, I might not have moved into the house. I mean, arguably, you might not have sold many of those houses at all if realtors and title companies hadn't stacked it in 400 pages and said, yeah, it's only a 3-foot easement and they're never gonna build it. They don't have the funding, they're never gonna build it. Quite frankly, I'll just be frank with you. If you talk to most citizens in the city, they would also say that. They would say, yeah, we don't have the funding, it's never gonna be built. But yet incrementally, I continue to see movement towards this being done. And Adam said it really well. It's his job to do what the city council wants him to do. And currently, the city council wants that road put in. It's on the general master plan. I actually love that thought. So incrementally, we're spending additional concrete and slurry for Murdoch Canal to be reinforced so that we can move it. We're spending money in 2011 on engineering plans. We just spent $5,700 on a traffic study for it. We're still spending money as Lindon residents for this project to go forward. And I think if you ask most people, they would just say, yeah, it's never gonna go in. It's too expensive. There's too many feasibility issues. But yet, 2015, we're reaching out to the Forest Service to swap land. So the sentiment of the Lindon citizens are like, yeah, it's never going in. But the city's working really hard to get it put in.
I'm not sure that's an accurate statement. And when you say the city council really wants that road to be put in, I'm not sure that's a real accurate statement. So I'd be a little bit careful with that.
Yeah,
And then
I would just
also
make sure you heard me correctly.
Right.
What I said was the city council still wants it to go in because it's on the general master plan.
But But as far as actively pursuing that,
The
I
last
don't-
time that was reviewed, the current city council probably was not in office, so
Yeah.
that's not a very fair statement to say.
Oh, okay. So again, hopefully you're not taking that out of context.
No, that's fine.
What I
get your
actually
point.
meant
We get
was,
your point.
I appreciated what Adam said before. He said, don't be against me. My job is to actually do what the Lindon City Council has asked us to do. So all I'm suggesting is that currently, whether it's the current council or previous councils, they've all approved the plan. So it makes sense that Adam and the staff are moving forward with the plan. That's all I indicated there.
Mike, can you tell us where Pleasant Grove City is on their intentions to maintain this corridor to make this road happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's on their general plan. They've,
But do we have current information from them? Didn't I read something in the staff report, actually, that they just recently in one of their city council meetings had entered into some sort of purchase agreement for
that was property.
some land?
That was property further west.
So would that indicate that they're still committed to at least the road coming through Pleasant Grove up to a certain point to the east? Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, they've just purchased, or not, they haven't purchased it yet, but they just signed an agreement to purchase this section right there,
From who, Mike?
from the property owner that lives in one
Okay.
of these homes.
So again, just to be clear here, the application does not cover 1,000 South. The application covers the corridor on the northeast corner, which is, in my opinion, a little bit different even from a traffic standpoint and a development standpoint.
Yeah.
But I would tell you, there's a lot of citizens in Lindon that have some concerns, and they would have to.
I'm wondering if they're still committed to the idea, if you step back, not just look at this one section of the road, if you step back and look at it as a circulation of traffic and goods and whatever, are they still committed to the need for that? And I mean, that's one indication that they are still committed to that. So I hear you, that's a good point you just made, but.
Yeah, I think that's really important. In fact, Mike gave me, when I first met with them, some great advice to go meet with Pleasant Grove and see how serious they were about that. My conversations are probably a little bit different than when the staff shows up, and I think the mayor even followed up with the mayor of Pleasant Grove for me. I'm not sure all of those private conversations. All I know about was my conversation with Daniel Cardenas. When I sat down and said, how committed are you to putting this road behind my house? And the answer was, we already have 2 inlets if the millets sell. We have the ingress and egress that we require for that 17 acres to be developed. And I said, okay, so does that mean you want the road or you don't want the road? We are neutral. We don't care about that road, but we do want to be good neighbors to Lindon. And I said, okay, I can understand that. And he referenced several of the issues that they're dealing with on 1,000 South, which I thought was very appropriate. So my conversation with Daniel Cardenas is, if it's on the general master plan, we're gonna help Lindon put the road in. If it's not on the general master plan, we're gonna let the developer run the road where they want it to go. So I'm not sure that Lindon City looks at that, or I'm sorry, I don't know. You'd have to ask them. But my conversations with Pleasant Grove is they don't look at this as a major collector road. They look at this as, let's help Lindon. That's been my conversations.
Do you have anything to add to that, Mike, or?
I mean, I think they do look at it as a major collector road because it's on their map as a major collector road, on their general plan map.
It's on our map too.
Do
but
we know what their city council says
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah, we did meet with them. They confirmed that this is on their map, that they were committed to this road when we met with them a couple months ago.
And it does seem like from the traffic study that the majority of the use of this road would be from Pleasant Grove to, and so it is,
It's very advantageous for Pleasant Grove.
for Pleasant Grove.
Yeah.
So I would say from that standpoint, right, that the traffic flow and everything from one city to the other is definitely borne out in the traffic study.
Yeah.
And when we met with them, it was their city manager, their public works director, their community development director.
Okay.
So,
Further questions?
Can I continue?
Yep,
Yeah.
Commissioner Thompson.
So basically what you indicated earlier, when I asked a question about who they were, you indicated it was not the city. Had you went during the due diligence process of purchasing your home, had you went and talked to the city, you might not have even bought that property.
Yeah, if I would have sat down with the first conversation I had with Mike, where he was actually laying out kind of the provisions that have to do with my corner lot and everything else. Yeah, I don't know. The people in my neighborhood are amazing, so it would have been a much more decision. We probably, arguably, I don't know. We probably, because of the people, would have moved in. But understanding really the depth of where that road runs, I think you would have arguably, you can ask the 18 people that are here in my neighborhood, they probably got told the exact same thing. The road's never going in, right? And so we all just get comfortable and we kind of talk ourselves into living in a great neighborhood.
That's probably what happened. Next question. Earlier you indicated that one of the things that we haven't taken time to discuss are the negative impacts on the city of Lindon. So other than, and I feel sorry for the people on 1200 because they are going to see an increased traffic on that road. However, that road was, from the way it appears, was designed for that extra traffic. Extra wide. I'm sure the developer would have loved to have made that road smaller, but we said way back then, no, you have to be wider. You have to put bike lanes in. You have to do all these other things. And so we forced them to do that. So other than the people on 1200, who I know are going to be negatively impacted, your proposed financial impacts to the city and the setback problems, what other than those three items, what other negatives does this cause to the city?
To the city or to the citizens?
To the residents of the city. If you eliminate those three, which we all agree, there is an impact to you regarding your setbacks, there is an impact on traffic there, and there is based on your proposal or your proposed or cost to the city in the future, what other negative impacts would there be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, those are huge negatives, right? We keep just overpassing them like they're not huge negatives. Like, we don't have traffic now, but we're inviting traffic in. That's a huge negative. We don't have a cost now, but we're gonna have a $25 million cost. I mean, these are things that, again, you just kind of brush over, but there's also major things. Did you move into Lindon City to have it be a traffic center? I think most people would say that they moved into city. What's our city theme? Like, a little bit of country? Does running a road like that along the east bench of Lindon feel like Lindon? So again, I mean, we're mitigating $25 million worth of costs like it's nothing here, and then we're also saying we're going to help Pleasant Grove and Orem and get rid of the feel of Lindon City so that we can move traffic, 75% of the traffic from Pleasant Grove to Orem to help them, where they're already huge cities. We didn't move to Lindon because I wanted to be in Orem. I actually moved from Orem to be in Lindon. But yet now you want it to be like Pleasant Grove and Lindon. And I think most of the people that live in Lindon would argue that there is a massive change of community feel, of the sediment here, of the beauty. Who wants to look out and see a major roadway going along our washout front? Look along the washout front. There's no road that high on the East Bench anywhere, unless you're going up Little Cottonwood Canyon and Big Cottonwood Canyon. There's just, who puts a road like that? So, I mean, there's a lot of reasons. I think the other reasons is, I think you got to think about the maintenance costs. What about the safety? Okay, so now I got a whole bunch of kids in my neighborhood running their Surons along a roadway that literally can allow you to go 50 miles an hour along it because there's no inlet or outlet besides my road. The other thing that's really hard for me to understand is, why are we putting this road in? You can't get on it unless you're on the far south side or on the far north side. It's a bizarre design. That's why it's never gone in so far. And so there's more than just the cost and the traffic. Man, again, as a citizen, I'm like, okay, well, even if you don't put it in, you're affecting all of the people that live along that pathway. You can't do anything with your yards. You can't do anything. There's been several people already the public hearing standpoint. There's just, and I'll let the other people that are here tonight voice some of those concerns to you. But it's a major concern. I mean, there's 40 head of deer in my backyard every single night. Where are they gonna go when there's a road there? On the road? What happens then? How much does it cost to snowplow that road? When currently there's no need for it. I don't know the answer to these questions. They're not being considered here, but it's a major issue. Do I now get to enjoy traffic all night long? You know, and again, we're talking like the people in 1200 East hopefully they're here tonight and they'll actually come up here and voice their opinions. But you're talking about adding 1,100 cars per your graph onto 400 East, or adding 5,000 cars onto 1200 East. Does that feel like a risk reward to you that makes any sense for $25 million? It doesn't to me. Doesn't serve the people of Lindon on the east side very well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other things?
I have a question for you. So, is there a reason you wanted to remove all the way up past Queensland's Court, like the entire thing?
I don't know that Queensland Court very well. If I'm looking honestly at this recommendation from the traffic study, first off, I couldn't tell from Mike's pictures if Queensland Court has another outlet or if it's just a cul-de-sac, right? Mm-hmm. So we're saying that the cul-de-sac is too long for our city provisions.
And the reason is because the road dead ends. If the road goes further and connects into another road, so the road goes through, then it's not considered a cul-de-sac all the way back to the beginning.
Planning Commission, but finishing the road to 380 might make some sense. I don't know. So my application was because the general master plan includes all of that roadway.
Okay.
That's my answer to you. I don't know enough about the 1200 east side of it and the concerns there, other than is that also where the aqueduct is? So I know that aqueduct runs through there, and that aqueduct is very protective of their properties based on previous efforts to develop. I'm sure you guys are all aware of that.
Right.
So maybe there's some resistance from just the citizens of Lindon to finish that road, but personally, I don't know how those people feel. They'd have to answer that question themselves, but does it make sense to go to 380? Maybe we get a little bit more traffic flow through there and we can finish that off and it maybe solves the whole problem.
I'd like to address that when I have time.
I have a question for staff. On the Queensland Court, because right now that is a illegal cul-de-sac, the way it's laid out, without the road going through. If we didn't continue the road as the master plan is laid out, wouldn't we have to go ahead and finish the road down to Queensland Court?
Or
Just to make
down to
that a
380?
legal- Yeah,
Yeah,
just to make that a legal cul-de-sac.
Could you
And
just
these
change the cul-de-sac rules?
Yeah, well, these aren't, but there's more to it than that.
Okay.
But isn't that also what the traffic study recommends that
That's
would need to
correct.
happen?
Those cul-de-sac rules have to do with safety, so I wouldn't take that
It-
type of
Yeah, it isn't
amendment
as simple
too
as
lightly.
just changing it.
Yeah, I don't know, so.
How long has it been there?
Part of it was built more recently.
We've been living with it since '96.
Yeah.
I'm just saying if you
Let's
change
wait
that
just a second. We'll have-
citywide, there's some safety concerns.
Yeah, we're gonna finish our conversation here and we'll open up to the public. So that we don't have conversations going on between, we need it to be recorded and at the mic, so thank you for your time. You'll have time to come up and ask your questions. But just for
I think
rules and procedure, let's,
Ready for some public?
are we done with questions here?
Can I
Yeah.
just say a couple
Yes.
things? The number 11,000 keeps getting thrown out. And Noah, correct me if I'm wrong, but so on this plan that the traffic engineer showed, so there's currently, here's 1200 East, so there's currently 2,500 vehicles on 1200 East. And if it's not built, sorry, if it is built, then it goes up to 7.1 thousand, so 7,100. So it's not 11,000, it's 7,100.
Yeah, and just to clarify that, Mike, I said 11,000 because that's what the traffic study says 400 East can handle if you widen the road and restripe it.
Right, but these numbers are showing that if you don't build it, it goes up to 5.3 thousand, so 5,300.
Yeah,
So-
correct.
Okay. I think we're ready.
Thank you very
Anything
much.
else you'd
No,
like to
thank you
say,
so
or-
much. Thank you for your time. Thank you, city staff.
Okay. So in just a moment, I'll ask for a motion to open the public hearing. At that time, as I've talked about before, the procedure will be one at a time. You'll come up, you'll please sign your name for the record and speak into the microphone. All comments need to be directed towards the commission. This isn't a time for interaction, between citizens and citizens. It's time to address the commission, give us your concerns. We may ask questions for clarification as you do it, and would like you to keep it as brief as possible, but still want you to be able to have the time you need to have your concerns. If it's a matter that's been presented clearly, please just say, I agree with that this is going to increase traffic, and that concerns me. It affects my yard, and so I'm one of those. We can note and tally, but we don't need to go into deep detail unless there's something new. Just for a matter of time, so we can be out of here before midnight tonight. Okay? So, do I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. The public hearing is now open. Those who would like to, one at a time, please come up, sign your name, state your name for the record, and then we're ready to hear you.
So my name is Russ Day. I live in Canberra area, so I'm not on 1200. I'm not on any of this. We were talking about, if this whole discussion was, are we going to fund the road today? I know my position would be, I'd vote against it. I'd be encouraging you not to. But I do look at, we've had several references to 1600 North and the construction that's going on there. I had the pleasure, no, not the pleasure, I had the displeasure of driving Pioneer Crossing day before yesterday. In both cases, it occurs to me that the foresight of planning years in advance was missing. And if you look at Pioneer Crossing, people say, hey, I didn't know they were going to do so much with Eagle Mountain. I didn't know so much was going to happen out on the far west side of the county. That's fair. Didn't know. And clearly, the cost associated with widening 1600 North now, as opposed to having thought about it years ago and at least maintaining an option, is way greater than if they'd maintained the option years ago. So my concern with this whole thing is not that we should build it today or that we even need to build it in 25 years. My concern is things change. Once you give up an option, it either is lost forever or becomes incredibly expensive to recover. And since we don't know what things will look like in the future, and there's very little cost in maintaining the option, I would vote or encourage you to maintain the option and do nothing for now. And there's people that, there are a small number of people, and I do say small compared to the population of Lindon, that would be affected, or they can't do some things they suppose they want to do if you don't remove this from the plan. But I'd say removing it from the plan significantly limits your options in the future, and I think that'd be a real mistake.
Thank you. Any clarification? Okay. And next, and maybe if we could, if you want to kind of line up on the front row, that might be a good cue, 4 or 5 at a time, so we can do it? Okay.
I'll try to stay brief because you got to line up.
So remember to sign your name and state your
Okay.
name, so we get it in the record correctly.
I am Eve Werner. I live on 725 North in Lindon. So this doesn't directly impact me except a couple points. So the traffic study did not include the 1,000 south build out, which is going to happen. And that's going to be a direct route to the freeway. So it's not going to be 7,000. It's going to be 7,000 times 2, 3. It's going to be a lot more than that. And I think you asked for like what other negative impact. Quality of life, you're turning so many homes into double frontage properties, which means we have a major road in the backyard of all of our properties and we have a road in the front yard. So you're really sandwiched between traffic. And in these plans, there's no sound wall in the plan at all. So a lot of these homes don't have fences. So you're opening up 150 plus homes in Lindon of current property owners and residents to a major collector street. It's going to be a major safety concern for the children. It's going to be noise concern. It's going to decrease all of our property values. And so that's some personal negative impact to answer one of your guys' questions. And then the other one is the wildlife impact. So putting a road like that right up on that mountainside, you're going to get sparks from tires. You're going to get cigarette butts thrown out. The chances of wildfire, I think, are going to really increase by having the sparks and the cigarette butts right there that we don't currently have. Never mind the deer, right? The 40 plus in his backyard, I've always got at least 15. Where are they going to go? Like, the vehicle collisions to animals are going to dramatically increase with this. You're taking away their homes. So that's all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My name's Jamie Harsh, and not only impact with animals, it's impact with safety. When you're bringing in extra vehicles from Orem to Pleasant Grove, you're going to increase crime rates, you're going to increase vandalism, other issues in that area. I do have a handout for each of you to address all the concerns that you have, so if I can leave this with you, that would be great. I do have a question regarding the ordinance adopted in 2000, the sensitive area ordinance, Ordinance 9913. It's an environmental ordinance that Lindon City adopted for this hillside. So this is about cutting into slopes, disrupting natural drainages, increasing wildfire risk. It also threatens the Salt Lake Aqueduct, which supplies drinking water to over 450,000 Utah residents. So just, you need to keep in mind, there's already that environmental safety in place that was done in 2000 by Lindon City for that sensitive area that was placed. Also a question regarding MAG for repayment. MAG does allow cities to negotiate with them, and other cities have done this successfully. You can use MAG. You can allow the homeowners to repurchase easement back to the city to offset the repayment, negotiate with MAG to allocate the repayment towards other infrastructure projects within Lindon. This could include improving existing roads, adding sidewalks, upgrading traffic signals. You could request a structured repayment plan. You could explore other alternative funding sources such as state transportation grants or partnerships with regional agencies to cover part of that payment. So you can negotiate with MAG, and it has, again, been done successfully by other cities. Also, I just want to address, you said, how does this affect your life? Well, it's a huge tax burden. It's the cost between 20 to 35 million today, and if we were to kick the can down the road and leave this on the plan for a what if, the what if it's a hillside. There's no more expansion. We are at the end. There's virtually no other building that can be done on this east side. So he mentions Pioneer Crossing and other roads. That was open land. We have no open land. So it's just to kick the can down the road. If you were to estimate that in another 20, 25 years, now you're looking upwards of $60 to $100 million if you kick the can down the road. So those are some of my things. I'd like to leave this with you.
And did you sign in, please?
Yes.
Any questions or comments? No? Okay. We'll just hand them and they'll hand them down to us.
My name is Paul Carter. Thank you, first of all. I commend you for your attempts to get as much information as you can. The last couple of meetings with the council and with the commission have been really informative for all of us as citizens, and I appreciate all the effort you're putting into this. I live on Queensland Court. Again, my name is Paul Carter. I have on my iPad here a photograph of my backyard. I'd like you to just pass around. If you take a look at that.
I did send them your email, so they have those pictures.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you've seen that. I'll just remind you of what that looks like with the retaining wall. So from the back of my house to the top edge of that retaining wall, where the slope starts up, is about 17 feet. And then from that point, it's about 10 feet from there over to where I think the edge of the curb and sidewalk would be with this commuter wall. One of the questions that came up a few minutes ago was, can we just make an access from the end of Queensland Court up to the road? That's from the level of the road up to that level of the collector road is about 30 feet in height. And the distance from the edge of the cul-de-sac there to where the road would be is probably at the most 45 feet. So I don't think that's feasible that way. And then to be able to have the option of having a curve in the road to come down there, you'd take out one of the houses there on one side for sure. When this was first discussed with the city council, I talked with the mayor and I asked what options Lindon has exercised in the past with right of, eminent domain, of taking out, buying out some of the houses like they're doing on 1600 North in Orem. She thought that was a novel idea. She couldn't think of anything where that's been done in the past. One of the neighbors that we have on Queensland Court is Liz Matson, who is a realtor. And when I mentioned that this was going to be in a meeting upcoming and talking about some of the options for Queensland Court, her comment last week basically was, Queensland Court was a mistake. The city of Lindon made a mistake in allowing Queensland Court to be here. With the road as it was originally planned or planned back in 1996, 1994, 1998 timeframe, I think everybody just thought, this is my speculation, so forgive me, but I think everybody just thought that that plan for the road just never would happen. And so the people in Lindon, in the Planning Commission, made the decision to go ahead and allow Queensland Court to be built to take advantage of some, or to have the developer get some extra value out of that land. There are 22 lots on that 1,500 length of cul-de-sac there. It's not going to be possible to make that a connection into this collector road. It will always be a cul-de-sac, or it will be destroyed with eminent domain or whatever to take out the backyards, whatever they are, of those houses there. I would invite your questions about that to see if there's any option, but I just don't see any option for that. That if the road is built, what's going to happen, as one of the previous public commenters said, you're going to have some sound barriers there. You've already got 17 feet. One of the photographs I think I sent out showed the view out my backyard. My eye level on the second level looks directly at the level of the roadbed there. And so you've got 17 feet drop. You've got 25 to 30 feet from the back of my house to that curb. You're going to have a sound barrier there to try to protect our houses, which is going to wipe out any sunshine that we get there. You're going to have, with those walls, you're going to have real problems with deer getting in there and being captive, trying to run down that right-of-way, a lot of roadkill, just a lot of issues that have not been addressed up until this point in this conversation. That's what I would like to present tonight.
Thank you. I guess, Mike, can I just ask a question with that? Is there anything, I'm not saying the city shouldn't, but is there anything that says the city has to build sound retaining walls or whatever the size of road?
No, I mean, if you look at that, again, that road profile of 1200 East, this is not, the Bangalore Highway, this is a,
So as it's currently constituted, there would not have to be any sound
Would not
barriers
be.
built by the city? That, okay, just to clarify that, so that they're, not saying that it wouldn't be good to do it or feasible, but I don't think that's a cost currently that the city would look at.
Okay, so again, with that very close proximity of the road to the house, maybe the wall shouldn't be considered to be a sound barrier. Maybe it's a safety barrier. You've got a 17-foot drop right off the curb. How is the city going to handle that?
Well, I think that's why we have the easements and stuff, and that's for the engineers and the people that build the road. They'll make sure that it's safe, and whether there has to be a retaining wall or not. My understanding is when they put this in, they put the easements in to make sure there was enough slope there to take care of it. And I have to trust the engineers and the safety people, because that's not my.
And I think from the traffic safety perspective, but that's what they have K-rails for, the stuff that you see separating freeways and everything, that's the purpose for those, but they're not a 14-foot wall.
So just again, to reinforce that thought, 17 feet away from the backside of several houses there that are close by. And there was another thought, but that's escaped me at this point. Again, thank you. Again, I think you're doing a great job. It's clear that you really want the best for the city. Thanks for taking into account all these different aspects.
Thank you so much. Oh, can we get the clipboard with the sign? Thank you. No. I was going to ask someone to sign in. And, yeah. Thank you so much.
Members of the commission, I thank you for all of your diligence on this. I know you want the best for Lindon. I am Jeff Wilson. I own several parcels that front on the 800 North portion of this corridor. I have been a victim. Oh, sorry. I have been a victim of this corridor for the past 15 years. I've always been in full agreement that a high-traffic corridor is not appropriate for the neighborhood, and it would diminish the character and the property values. It would bring 24-hour noise and unwanted intrusion. Not to mention the fact that 5,000 of those cars that go by are not even Lindon residents. And I can't imagine why we would do that for these other cities when we don't benefit our own city. When I built my barn and residence 14 years ago, I was required to deed over a significant property, 41 foot by 100 foot, to accommodate the full width of the corridor expansion, as well as to pay in advance for the corridor street improvements on this frontage. This is very costly to me, and it was due to the corridor engineering plan that Lindon was working from at that time that included extensive cut and fill costs and significant width. I'm hoping this may be adjusted if this plan is abandoned, which many of us really are determined to see that through. I understand that, when I built my new home 2 years ago, PG Lindon required me to deed over sufficient frontage once again, 43 feet by 122 feet to accommodate the full width of the connector. I'm hoping that can be resolved. One of the worst things that happened up here, and you worry about what's the negative of keeping this on the master plan. We've heard for the past 15 years you can't do normal road repairs on 800 North because they're all held up due to the corridor plant expansion one day. If this road's a mess, one of the worst in Lindon and Pleasant Grove. It's an embarrassment to both cities. Is there some way that road can actually be addressed if we keep this on the master plan? The portion of that road just north of my barn and north of the Guernsey home is very narrow. That little teeny narrow cut through, it's very dangerous. You can barely get 2 cars through there safely. There's lots of close calls.
How will this be addressed if we just wait for this development 25, 30 years away? Of course, part of that concern there is what happens with the Millet property roadway, and it may actually address the problem. So this is basically all I had to say. I appreciate your effort. I am encouraged by the city's administration to consider removing this from the master plan. It's definitely the right thing to do.
Thank you.
Any questions?
So are you, I'm trying to picture your home. Is it right by where the little jut out comes? Mike, can you show us where that is, just so I can?
It's right here.
It's right there. Okay, that's where I was thinking. I just wanted to make sure I put in my head correctly where your home is.
One last thought. You know, there was a time when we could ride horses down 800 North there, and now we're going to have 7,000 new cars a day. Obviously, Lindon is not going to be a little bit of country if we keep this going.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dave McGill. I am on 1200 East. And so out of respect and appreciation for Dave Gardner, I had to come up and say we are here. And thank you, Dave, for all the work that he's done. And thank you to all of you for the time. Sharon mentioned something that that made me take a step back a little bit and think, well, maybe we're talking to everyone we're all on the same side here. Do we have a feel, or maybe I can't even ask this, but do we have a feel for where you all stand if this were to go to a vote?
At this, you'll hear after we're done, but we'll take public comment and then we'll talk to the commission.
Okay.
We're still gathering info.
Still gathering info, so.
All right. Okay, sounds good. Well, we just, we moved in 2005. We bought our house in 2005. We're on the corner of 1200 East and 140 North, right across from the horse staging area. So we're on the north side of 140 North as it goes down that steep hill. And I mean, shame on us for maybe not checking. It was obvious that it looked like a road would eventually go through. And talking with the mayor at the time was a good friend of ours, and he didn't promise anything, but he, it seemed to indicate that likely would never happen. And I thought that was fairly credible coming from a mayor. Yeah, I think everything has been said. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but we don't have many horses to beat here anyway now. But there would probably likely be a stop sign right in front of our house. I don't love that idea with brakes and things. That hill, one of our winter entertainment activities is to watch people how they can't get up that hill, or they slide down that hill because if it snows and the plows aren't there, it is extremely, extremely steep. And this would just add, I think, more danger to that situation. Because when you're up that top on 1200 East and you're trying to get west, it's very hard. You cannot go on that 140 North a lot of the time. But so just let it be heard that we on 1200 East, and I think I can pretty accurately speak for all of us who live on 1200 East, would love to have this removed from the plans. And we appreciate your consideration of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. My name's Ileana Gardner, and I wish I wasn't related to Dave because I don't want that to influence how you think about me. And I wish I didn't have a property that's directly affected, because to me this project is more than just the 18 properties in my neighborhood in 1200 West, which are significant because citizens are significant. However, this traffic study directly showed there's not a need, that this is not a traffic need, that the current 400 is more than capable to take on all possible growth that it's predicted till 2050. And so to me, this whole issue is, why are we putting so much money or possible money into something that isn't needed, is disrupting current citizens, and doesn't serve the majority, if very many at all, of Lindon residents? It just seems completely asinine to me. The first man who got up and disagreed with us, which I actually love because we've been accused of bullying, and I love the other point of view. I do think it's super important for cities and city planners and to be forward thinking. I think that clearly is your role, is to make sure that Lindon proceeds forward in the next decades. However, we live on the mountain, and we don't even own the land. Lindon does not own the land farther east. It's federal land, it's what all these awkward, we don't even own the land to do this, let alone further land east to develop. And so the same thing how he was comparing Lehigh and Eagle Mountain and Saratoga Springs, and that failure to foresee future development, I think, is completely inapplicable to us. We do not have we live on the mountain, we don't have the growth. So I would encourage you to please remove this, as it seems like a complete unnecessary thing to be doing, to be spending time on, and to keep it on the plan prohibits many residents from moving forward. And I just don't see how it makes any sense. I can't wrap my mind around it. So, thank you.
Please sign in. Just one question that came to my mind while we talk about the people on 1200 and if they're going to be affected. Is there anybody here from 400?
Or 200.
Or 200? Because I think as cities, as representatives of the city, I don't think they were noticed for this because of, but we do also need to think about the traffic impact on all of those. So just everybody keep that in mind.
I think that's super important too, because clearly they already have major issues, right? That all their houses, driveways funnel onto that. But like was mentioned in the study, that road was planned on for being possible to take on vast majority more than is now, and they said that it wasn't a consideration in negativity having the driveways. And so, and this is just a prediction for 2050. Like, just as everything's hypothetical, and that's another thing I guess that's really bothered me, is we have irritations with this road on the long cul-de-sac. It's been here since 1996. You act like this is a horrible thing that we have to address, but it hasn't been addressed this whole entire time. And so...
It's been addressed by that there's a road that will solve the problem.
Okay.
And that happened in another administration.
Right.
Another problem, but it does need to be addressed to meet code.
Agreed, but it's been how long since it hasn't been, something hasn't been fixed. So I think the issues, I feel like I wish you would focus on the no need, the traffic study you required and wanted shows there is no need for this road. It is significant dollars, and all of us who are directly affected by it, not all of us, us here do not want it. And I think that should be held in total consideration.
We appreciate your opinion. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Val McComber. I am a resident of Highland at Bald Mountain. When I bought my property, I asked a lot of questions. One of the questions I asked my real estate agent is to what happens to that big pipe I see up there, just right out my window. I see a section right there that is broken between a gully. If we had a little earthquake, what would happen? Where would that water go? And she, to her credit, took about 2 weeks and started researching and contacting state people and others. And they said, well, first of all, that particular section is more constructed in a way that it probably wouldn't. But if it did, it's located in a little gully right there that it would flow down and show me where it would go, and it basically would miss most of the houses until it got more dispersed in a way that it wouldn't hurt. If that happened with that road, it would be gone, and everybody that's on it. There's a kind of a concern that I see. My house looks right up. My study has a beautiful window. I look up on the mountain. I watch the horses up there and the deer is crossing back and forth. I came to Lindon for that kind of view. I've been looking all over for this exact thing that Lindon, little bit of country, represents. If you put the road in there, you're gonna really cut what I put that big window for, that little bit of country. Now, when I'm watching out there, I see daily lots of Lindon people who don't live right where we're talking about, coming up, going through, up into the hills, hiking, biking, taking their dog walks up on that little trail. I see high school kids doing their cross-country track along that little road easement that's kind of up there. And they're just having this beautiful piece of country that is what I believe, Lindon is all about. That road would just kill all of the opportunities for hiking, biking, and access to that piece of country that we're a part of. So that's one of the things that hasn't been said that I thought might be interesting. One of the interesting things about my house, when I bought it, they said nothing about any easements. There was no word whatsoever. I'm across the street from my neighbor who has that easement, and he wasn't really sure what was going on until we talked. And so the discussion of how the information was given was basically either nil or who cares, to almost all of the neighbors that I'm aware of. So but the thing was interesting also is they didn't have a very good engineering survey of some of the lots. There's at least 5 homes that I know of that have foundation slippage down. When my house was built, we had a different engineering company come, and they said, you cannot build a house as you've put it down, in the basement down in. The dirt you're on is not sustainable. We had to go another 12 feet down and build that up with engineering rock and have it tamped down to great expense to just give me a little bit of a foundation. That is the kind of mountain that you're talking about putting a road on. I will guarantee, well, I can't guarantee. I took some engineering, civil engineering courses back when, and one of the things that you don't understand about money is they usually talk about if it goes right. They don't talk about when all the things can go wrong. And if those little valleys that have filled dirt just thrown in from when the pipe was put in, that's not going to sustain a road. You're going to have to go to a lot deeper. I think you'll double the money just to put the road in. So there's a couple of things like that. On the other side, you've got to fix that S curve. I've had 2 near accidents with folks coming up that big wide road, bumping along and having a hard time even staying on the surface because it's so bumpy, right? But still thinking they can go as fast as the road width indicates they ought to, hit that S-turn and try to slide through it instead of turning in it and missing me by inches. That is a safety issue. That's got to be fixed immediately. That road, that 1,000, whatever it is, Murdoch Trail Road, they patched it enough. You go down there and you make that another little turn, but there's always a great big crater of potholes right where you want to put the tires. So you got to go around that, and now you're again going into the traffic. And in the winter when it's snow there, that is awful. You want to use some of the money, give it to whoever, if it's Pleasant Grove, or share that. Please fix that road. Now, how would you do it? Since I have to drive that often, right past Dave's house, wave to him, right where I get ready, if there's anybody coming up the road and scares me every time, just run it straight through. Don't try to bring the hill up with 2 embankments of retaining wall. Run it straight through and lower that one and put 1 wall on the opposite side. It's half the cost, it's easier to get to, and you'll have the safety concerns instead of having to, again, turn around that. That's just an idea that I had that should be just brought up. So, I totally agree with the safety. I have 5 deer in my backyard is only 58 feet wide. I have 4 or 5 deers, sometimes eating all, I can't put roses in anymore. There are going to be deaths from deer. There will be. I don't know what your accountants and lawyers say, who's going to be responsible for some of that, but I hate to have that on my side of the concern. It's going to happen. So I agree with the safety things, and so quality of living, Lindon people, not just close, but all the way down that move up into that area, is not going to have access. You're going to lose your little piece of country. Thank you.
Want a quick follow-up?
Just a really quick one, because of what you said, Steve, on the communication and getting the word out. We hadn't known about this at all, except from other, like we heard from our neighbor who had posted on Facebook. So I would just suggest that, especially the streets that you mentioned, 1200 East, 400 North, the other one, that you maybe send out notifications to everyone saying we're having these hearings and meetings discussing these things, because I think if everyone, especially particularly in those areas, knew about these, this room would be packed, standing room only. And if we even notified the whole city, then it would be, we'd have to have it in maybe the Delta Center or something. But I think it's, maybe I probably should be staying more in tune with the Lindon City website or whatever. But, so that's on me. But if we really do want to understand the full representation, I think it would really behoove all of us to get specific invitations out to those people.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Brad Gibb. I live in Lindon. I just got some questions that I don't think I've seen answers to. I don't know if it shows on the map, but there are 4 homes on the corner of let's see, what is it? Sorry, I'm looking at this. On the corner of 1500 and Murdoch, as well as a retention basin. I haven't seen in any of the pictures how those 4 homes in the retention basin will be impacted by the road. Have you guys taken that? Is that taken into consideration as it comes past?
Sorry, I'm not sure where you're.
So on the corner of, I believe it, Murdoch Canal and 400 East, I guess it would be.
Is it these?
Those 4 homes in that retention basin.
Yeah, so if we go back to this that we showed at the beginning, this is how that alignment is planned with.
So what
Lindon
happens?
and Pleasant Grove.
Oh, I see. What happens to the canal trail
So-
there? Is the road a bridge over the top
No,
of that?
it goes to the south side of this road and then crosses over to Crosswalk.
And there's room to fit the trail in there?
There is.
Okay, cool, great, thank you. The cost of the road has been laid out. What municipalities participate in that? Does that fall entirely on Lindon to build the road?
We would look at grants and things like that.
But it'd be
so-
all responsible, Lindon, to incur that or come up with those grants?
Or potential builders.
Well, part of that would be constructed in Pleasant Grove and by
But even if
whoever's
it's
developing
builders, that cost will ultimately end up on the homeowners that buy that property. So it is all borne by Lindon. The entire cost or responsibility to come up with the funds, is that
No,
true?
It's not, if we go back to this map, portion of it would be built by the developer, whoever develops a mill.
But again, the cost of that would be imputed onto the lots of the people that buy that.
In
So-
Pleasant Grove, and
In
then
Pleasant Grove, gotcha.
the rest of this
And the rest of that would be
would
Lindon.
be funded through grants or other opportunities.
But borne by the responsibility of Lindon to come up
Not
with those grants
necessarily,
or fund it.
grants aren't just.
Is Pleasant Grove gonna seek those grants, or is it only
Right,
falling
I keep
on us?
taking this over, this is meant for you guys.
So many unknowns on that.
Yeah, I think.
And that's part of the point of the
yeah.
question.
I think the general answer is that Lindon's will need to seek ways to build the road, but there's lots of ways that money does not end up being a burden on 100% of the burden on Lindon residents.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
I think that's what we're trying to say is, we don't
Does.
know.
But what I
and-
see the council continuing to defer to other cities who are not responsible to move that forward. If the burden of putting this in falls on Lindon, why do we keep going to Pleasant Grove and saying, well, is it on their map or not?
Well, I think.
That's my question on that. That's the intent
I think
behind
the
asking
intent,
that.
though, is this road, if you look, and the ultimate, it's a connector from all the way down to the freeway. And when that goes through, that's a connector.
I understand their interest in
to
it.
the future development of 700 North, which is very important to Lindon. So if you look
Got
at, if you look at the, step back and look at the big picture.
That was where I was gonna go next, so that makes sense.
becomes a very important part.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That's where I wanted to go next. If 75% of the traffic is going between cities, yet we're bearing the burden of ensuring that this gets put in, that brings up a question there of just, again, why? And then that was gonna be the other thing is there other intent for this road, keeping that section of the road? Because you're right, it doesn't only benefit what goes across the bench there. What are the other benefits of having this on the plat map? Where else does it benefit? Either Lindon or Pleasant Grove.
And I think one of the big things to Lindon is eventually, I shouldn't say if, because it will be, as 700 North is built out, and with an idea of being a commercial center or what's on the Lindon master plan, the Lindon Village area.
Where is 700 North?
So from towards the freeway, all the undeveloped plans. Down by Walmart. Past Walmart, towards
all
the
of
freeway.
that section. That whole
area.
section, that then would come straight up 1100.
Yeah, I mean, that's the connection to all of that, which could be.
Is,
But it comes down.
So, no.
is there, no, I think I get it.
So that,
Is there a way to preserve that benefit without it running across the bench?
possibly, I don't know.
We don't know.
That's something that would have to be discussed.
So many things that are unknown and so many things that.
Okay.
It's so far out there and so many things unknown that.
There are lots of unknowns.
And so that's one of the big, if you look at, I think, the first presenters saying we have to look at the big picture and what's gonna
Agreed.
happen. That's one of the things we have to look at, is how is this going to affect what ultimately might be the tax base and the driver of Lindon in the future of that 700 North corridor is very important.
Can I ask you a question? If
No,
the
wait.
road goes all the way up to connect, how does that benefit anybody in London? To go from the freeway down by Walmart all the way up to the east side? How
Well,
does that benefit
no,
anybody?
no, we need to move ahead. I'm just, to answer your question.
Yeah, that's what I was asking, was
there-
trying to see the bigger picture,
there's
because it's
other
hard
things-
to see it.
More people
there.
coming from Orem down to a retail hub that.
Benefits Lindon.
Would benefit Lindon greatly.
And that's what I was trying to get at. I don't think we've really tried to talk about the big picture. That's what I wanted to facilitate. So in increasing flow of traffic, even if it's not benefiting access to residents' homes in Lindon, there's a commercial benefit to it, to getting traffic to the commercial centers that does fund this. Is that what we're trying to say?
There is
like a fair way to say
I appreciate driving Pleasant Grove roads to get to American Fork. I appreciate taking the 1600 North exit in Orem to get to my home. And so I also appreciate it when people stop into our Lindon Walmart, our Home Depot, our car dealerships, and spend money here in the city. So again, increasing
Flow
and
through.
facilitating traffic, especially to our
Facilitates
commercial districts and to our residential, is important to me.
Yeah, makes total sense. So I guess we're just looking at that corridor across the top. The only way I would look at this differently than I think has maybe been discussed, that I would point out to the council, would be, I believe we're suffering from like a status quo bias, that we keep looking and saying, well, since 1964, it's been on there, and it feels like the council has looked at it from a standpoint of, it's already on there, what evidence is there to leave it on there? As opposed to, I think the residents are looking at it and saying, if it were never there in the first place, do the studies justify placing it on there and incurring that cost? And as we go through and look at the traffic studies, the cost, all these issues, I don't think it would get I would like you to look at it from the standpoint of, would it get voted on if it didn't already exist? rather than are there reasons that we can justify keeping it there? Because there are real now immediate costs to keeping that plan there for potential perceived benefits in the future. And I think then the last part that I would have said is the gentleman that mentioned the option, his logic is true for a free option. This isn't a free option. And so back to the points I think that have been made elsewhere, I don't think you all individually as persons have an interest on this road going in or not. But because it's on the plan, all actions have to be aligned against moving that plan forward. And we continue to incur cost on it. I would much rather spend 800 grand to buy back that land to not have to put 30 million into the road. I'm not sure we're looking at it from that angle of yes, there are real costs to stopping it, but are those costs greater? Is there a savings to be had by not blindly continuing to move toward the plan? So that's what I would encourage the council to look at from the standpoint of if it were not there, would we be voting to put it there, or can we justify the economic benefits versus the real actual tax and cost to the city of Lindon there? That's my angle on it. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. And I didn't see, did you sign in? Just, I did, yeah. Okay, perfect. Just for them to have your name.
I'm just going to do a quick follow-up. Jared, I appreciate your comment about getting city to city. I've never had a problem getting to Pleasant Grove, getting to Orem, getting to American Fork. We don't have huge expansion or growth. And who takes an east side corridor to get to any infrastructure, to Walmart or to Home Depot? I would never go from a freeway all the way up to the East Bench to then go to Orem, or anybody going from the freeway take a connector to go to their home in Pleasant Grove. It just doesn't make sense to me. A connector road from city to city, you're not connecting infrastructure to a hospital, to industrial area. You're connecting homes to homes where 75% of Lindon residents don't get to use this road at our taxpayer money. Doesn't matter if you're coming from grants, from this, from that. The government doesn't make money. The government has money from taxes. So it doesn't matter where the money's coming from, it's still tax dollars being wasted and being used. And I do appreciate you hearing all of our voices. And I just want to say, please take our voices into consideration and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? We're getting, so.
I need a break here.
Yeah, we're either gonna do, you take a break for a moment, or we're gonna need to.
I'll give you like a
So
minute,
let's-
I'll be done. We'll take the last two and then.
We'll
move
take
on.
these last two. Is there anybody else? Okay, these will be our last two comments, and I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing after that.
Hi, my name is Quentin Guernsey. I actually live between Dave and Jeff Wilson, so I'm the house on the weird S-curve. My points would just be cost. I am concerned, like, is this really a good use of taxpayer money? Second would be the wildlife concern. Like Dave mentioned, we have deer down in our house every single night. And then as was mentioned, that little S-curve actually wasn't an official road. Steve Phelan put that in when he built his subdivision down there. There have been numerous accidents on that. I have had to provide video evidence from my house of many accidents from my outdoor cameras of accidents that have happened there. So I would be concerned about putting a major higher speed road in there and just in that intersection. And appreciate your guys' time, and I'll try to get us back on schedule.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
My name is Eric Svensson, and I am a neighbor to Dave and a few others that have spoken up here tonight. I do a lot of driving. I love the wilderness of Utah. I grew up in Provo. I now live in Lindon and love it. I've lived here 6 years. I love the fact that it seems like it used to be and still is farm, ranches, you know, that sort of vibe. Recently, I was driving around Jordanelle. I don't know if you've been up there recently with all the development going on, but I happened to drive by a road that they just put in to get to a development on the hillside with a massive retaining wall, and it is just a road. And I thought, that is the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. As I was driving home, I had to run into Orem, came up 400 North, and I happened to stop where the roundabout is now. And I looked up and I thought, you know, look at these beautiful homes. We got the trees, we got the hillside. And then I thought about an ugly, nasty road at the top of that hillside with lights, a retaining wall. And I thought, that just isn't Lindon. It's not what I moved here for. I'm one of those that was talking to my realtor, and I stood on the barbed wire fence of the Mills property, which I now know, thanks to Adam, that was technically Lindon City property, and my realtor told me there's a 3-foot easement for utilities and a 10-foot construction easement, the rest is yours. My mistake for not getting an appraisal done, I've learned, and I understand that now, but I also accept that that's Lindon's property, but I still think that this is just a waste. It restricts me on what I can do and can't do on my property for something that doesn't make sense. If the traffic study had come back with a different result, I definitely would have a different opinion. And so I agree with almost everyone's comments here tonight. The first meeting, we had over 100 people here. The second meeting, the council meeting, we had an enormous amount of people here. There are a lot of people that do not want this, on the master plan, and are hoping you will consider the people that don't want this when you are doing your vote. And I appreciate your time and for being here tonight. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I'd like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the public hearing is now closed. So the commission will now discuss amongst ourselves in a open public forum, but so you can hear what we say. But the time for comment is now closed. Okay?
5-minute break.
And we're going to take a 5-minute break and be back. You want to switch me, Sharon?
They definitely have some wisdom. I was surprised that they were, yeah, I was surprised that they were not gonna be here, actually. Oh, really? It didn't come in? No. Nancy submitted his papers? Is it coming, are they coming that quickly? Oh. I don't remember. But I really don't. You know, with the technology these days, I think the bishop submits everything electronically, right? Yeah. Makes sense.
Don't envy your position, but give me 2 weeks and I'll be there, so I don't feel too bad for you.
Oh, I don't know. Well, they have to notice the agenda. I think they have. Yes. That makes sense. Let's call it back to Okay, if we can come back to order here. Let me take my second mic or onto the microphone. Okay, all the commissioners are back, so we'll start with our deliberations. Just to remind the public hearing has now been closed. The commission is now going to discuss our thoughts on what we've heard and talk amongst ourselves. And once we've discussed it long enough that we feel like we're ready, someone will make a motion. The motion will be either to recommend that we approve this to the city council, recommend that we deny it to the city council, or if we feel like we need more information, there is a possibility we could continue this. So those are the three possible outcomes. But we'll start with, is there a certain commissioner that wants to lead out with their thoughts or questions? Hearing.
Are you ready, Sharon?
I don't know that I am leading out necessarily. I guess my first thought is.
And let's have you talk into the microphone so that we.
I guess my first thought is, yeah, I agree, the road will probably never go through with what the cost will be and what it would take to put it through. And so to leave it on the master plan would probably not hurt anything. My biggest concern, and what sways me, it doesn't, okay, it doesn't, and as far as retaining, the rural nature of that area, that doesn't really concern me either because, I think about what Lindon, the residents, thought when Canberra was put in, I mean, I've heard from some of the old timers that they thought that, the city had been ripped apart when that area up there was put in of their whole hillside, or when your areas were put in, that destroyed a lot of the natural habitat there too. So I'm not concerned about that. Or I think about when Center Street was covered, I mean, the canal was covered and Center Street went through. I remember the big debate then, not wanting the upper part of Lindon to go through to this lower part of Lindon. The thing that concerns me the very most out of all of this is that with the development that is going on up above, with the Millet property, that a developer could use that same master planned road to, if our master plan was left on the books, they could use that same master planned road to continue to go through those properties. And that's my biggest concern. Even if the property was just left set, even if the road didn't go through for another jillion years, they would still be able, instead of cutting their own road up through, they could use that master planned road. So that is one of my biggest concerns. As far as the deer, we all have, I live up in the upper part of Lindon, we all have deer on our property, all over in our yards, and all those kinds of things. I'm not worried about those things. We all have all those kinds of things. And like I said, the development of Lindon, that's, lots of people have had those concerns as different parts of Lindon have been developed. But that is my biggest concern is another developer coming in and using that same access to go through those properties, even if our road was not put in and just left to set, and it was left on the master plan. And of course, I can't imagine Lindon ever coming up with the amount of funding and what it would take to actually put the road in. So to leave it set for that reason doesn't bother me, but it does bother me that could happen, that other could happen. So those are some of my concerns.
Okay, thank you.
I'll go.
You want to go? Should we go down? We'll skip me, but we'll go down this way and I'll
I
facilitate.
guess the first thing that really impressed me tonight was Mike's presentation on the history. There has been a lot, many years. We talked about 1963, we put it on the plan, but that's not the case. There's been many years of foresight and thought that went into this master plan. And that road is up there for many reasons. I come from a traffic safety background where I like the fact that it's a collector road. That's what the roads are designed to do, is they're designed to get the roads out of the traffic out of the residential area. When Mike looked back, initially pointed, or I guess when it was initially, all these streets in green would be reduced traffic and it was gonna be pushed up onto a collector. That's what it's for. I hesitate to, being here on the planning commission, I think sometimes we are worried about this building structure, that building structure, but what we're really here to do is plan for the future. And this road is on the master plan, and that's what the future is. With the current pressure that we're receiving from our state legislatures every week to density, build more, we really don't know what's gonna happen to that hillside. I'm sure there was people in Traverse Mountain who said nothing's ever gonna be built up on Traverse Mountain. It's unbuildable. But look at it, Traverse Mountain is there. And so we really don't know what's gonna happen in the future. So I think from a planning perspective and from the perspective of getting people off onto the connector streets, of allowing for quicker response for emergency vehicles, for everything to be able to travel from north to south. And I also agree with the comments that it will open up and provide another avenue to our busy areas. I think it needs to stay.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Danielson?
Yeah, so I appreciate all the comments and everyone that's shown up. It's kind of fun to have lots of people here. We usually have a lot of empty chairs, so. But my question is, what would it look like, and I'm asking the Planning Commission or Mike, what would it look like to continue this? Are there other solutions that we could come up with? Are there things that, have we exhausted everything on this?
The designs we've done are preliminary, right? And so unless we wanted to put more engineering studies into it, I'm not sure what else we would do. Noah, do you have any other?
I was just trying to think what you're going to gain by continuing it.
specific in which you can send, direct us and say, would you please go look at this?
Right.
And yes, and I think the application is to remove it, and so we'd have to think if, I think we have to honor the applicant's request too, that they're asking to remove it, and so that's what we're voting on, I believe.
We're voting on
Yes.
to
As the
remove the
applicant's
entire
request.
thing, right? Yeah.
And as you make your recommendation, you can always say that you recommend that it only go to 380 North or whatever. You guys can adjust your recommendations however you want. If you want it in, or you recommend denial, or you recommend it's how you shape that. So
I think that's another point when we look at the map in front of us, and once you add in that the Millet property will probably be built out sometime in the future, and we do want to make that connector north up to 380. When you look at that, that's over half of the proposed issue here that we do want to put in.
Right. Well, and
So
my
that's just,
question
that was
is,
just
right?
an observation.
Well, and my concern is rushing this where, I mean, when I look at this today, I can't approve that because of how much is affected by it, without knowing what the Millet property is gonna do. There's just so many unknowns, it's hard to approve that for me.
Commissioner Showers?
Yeah, I'll try to be coherent. I got a lot of thoughts. I've really tried to listen and learn and appreciate all your comments. And Dave, I think you should probably get involved with city council and planning and zoning. I really do. I think you're very articulate and appreciate your efforts there. I love Lindon. We've been here for 14 years. We plan to be here for a long time. And I use this area all the time to recreate, hike, and ride horses. And it's kind of a special area for me. So, to think about a road coming through there, while I'm not living right there, it does affect me and my recreation, my enjoyment, and my lifestyle. If I could put a pause on development in Lindon, I would. I mean, it would be nice to kind of put a pause on what we've got and just kind of maintain that, but that's just not a reality. I don't know how to do that. A lot of the arguments that the city is making, or that some of us are maybe making to keep this on the plan, are not very strong. You guys are making some really good arguments, but I think it's not fair for the city to have to argue from sort of the position of having a crystal ball of what could happen in the future. To think that there's not going to be development higher than where your neighborhood is, I think that is a huge mistake. I think it's an absolutely huge mistake. Right now, that might seem a little bit impossible. Topographically, there's actually a lot of developable area there. That kind of thing happens over a long period of time. It takes politicking, it takes expertise, but the demand is not going away. So where there is demand for those types of properties, people are going to find a way to be able to do that. Currently, our ordinances wouldn't allow that, our zoning wouldn't allow that. None of us really have an appetite to see that happen, but that's going to happen. I mean, if you look at Suncrest, who would have thought there'd been homes up on that mountain? Or every time I go to the Parade of Homes, you go to Alpine, there's roads up there servicing new lots that have been developed that cost multiple millions of dollars, the same kind of money we're talking about. But because that product can be sold, the developer is making those kinds of expenditures to put in those kinds of roads. Now, again, the history of those properties is probably quite different than what we're talking about up above here. But there are properties that are actually being traded right now along the bench at the mouth of Battle Creek. There's private property at the mouth of Grove Creek. Those are currently not annexed into the city, but we're not going to stop the growth that's coming here unless, Utah just goes to hell, People want to be here. And every time somebody builds a house in Lindon, and every time somebody moves here, including me from other areas, we are losing a little bit of country. And so, it's just good. Like I said, if I could push a pause to it, I would do that, but I just don't know how to do that. So I really think that it's short-sighted to think that there's not going to be development above where we're currently at. That may not actually happen right here in the city of Lindon, but north of that and even south of that, I could see homes going up in those areas that this road actually would service. In fact, I could see the 1200 east going north all the way to Grove Creek and Battle Creek and servicing that. So again, you're saying that no right now, but 25, 50 years makes a huge difference, makes a big difference. And actually 25 years in the development cycle is not a very long time. 25 years ago was 2000. That's not that long ago. And a lot of things have actually happened in this valley and in this area in those 25 years. If the developer is going to come in and develop a road and bear the expense of that, if Pleasant Grove City doesn't have to pay that at the taxpayer's expense, or Lindon City doesn't have to pay that, I'm all for building that road all the way to where it would connect eventually into a 1200 East. Best case scenario, you've got homes behind your homes with the new development. I actually personally think it's maybe sixes, but that's actually not that desirable too, because that might be a quarter-acre lot, and those people could be building a two-story home. Their house is going to completely block your view. I mean, you're going to feel really shut in. With the road behind there, whether that's a normal residential road or this collector road, you at least have some openness to that.
At least we can plant trees in our lot if we own it, to cover that. We can't do anything with our backyard.
Jared, it runs to our house.
Okay.
I understand, but if you have houses on a quarter-acre lot that are built up and their property line touches your property line, I'm just saying that's not that desirable either.
It is.
Commissioner, let's address the commission
Right.
for now.
So again, it's a crummy situation both ways. I'm not trying to sugarcoat that at all. A lot of the negatives that you guys are talking about, I get it. The deer, the aesthetics, the cost, that's the cost of growth. We're experiencing that in this city and all over this valley and all over the Wasatch Front. I mean, it's just going to happen. I mean, if we're worried about the deer, then why did we put in that subdivision and some of the other subdivisions that have gone in? You know, we should have stopped it. Yeah, no, you have a very valid concern. You have a very valid concern there on that. Let's see. Flying cars, that's not a joke. I mean, really, we could have flying cars before we could really justify the need of paying the money to put this road in. And then what is the speed limit on that road? Would that be 35 miles an hour? Do we know?
I think it's
Noah?
They'll go 60.
30
Well, all city roads right now,
or
except for
25.
the ones maintained by UDOT, are all 25 miles an hour, so.
I'm just saying, you could,
Probably it'll be, could be 30, 35.
you could potentially hit a deer on 835 East, just, going 25 miles an hour, just as, the probability of that is just as high as is this road going in. I really think that's the case.
You haven't seen the deer come through, they come through by 40s.
I've seen the elk and the deer go through there. I'm up there all the time.
Let's keep the comments here, please.
Okay. I think that's pretty much kind of my thoughts there. I mean, as the first gentleman stated, if the proposal was to spend $25 million to build that road today, I would say hell no. I mean, it's just not even a question. If we can get to a certain point and we can maintain those options, I would be all for that. I'm not really for the city spending money on that unless the right opportunity came up to acquire a piece of land that was needed or something of that nature. But I can't personally justify putting in that road, but I also can't justify taking it off the master plan.
Thank you, Commissioner Showers. Commissioner?
This is the hardest discussion and that I've had yet. I haven't been on this crew very long, but spent hours and hours and hours digging into this and going up there and walking the whole length of the road and spending time there. And I came into this with so when I became a commissioner, really I understood my role is to make sure that Lindon is prepared for the future 50 years from now and beyond. And so I came into this tonight really not ready to recommend removal of that road because it could benefit Utah County residents. And we're neighbors. It's not a Lindon versus others kind of thing. We all use each other's infrastructure. But there have been a lot of really good points brought up tonight. And it's really hard. I think I keep coming back to two things. One is the traffic study, the line in there that says that they did not assume any additional development on the east side of Lindon. I moved into Lindon when I was, in 1991. I grew up here and moved back when I got married and was able to afford a home. Grew up on the east side of Lindon, what was the east side then, which was 600 East. And now I live on the west side. But Lindon looked very, very different at the time. I rode my bike up and down the hills that are now homes. And when I look to the east of the actual property that is incorporated Lindon City, there's a lot of area that could be traded. I've read of other places trading land with the Forest Service to get development in. And I think about how do those folks get down to the freeway. I think that's where, to the freeway or to wherever they work, I think the freeway because it's the connector north and south so much, but it doesn't have to be that necessarily. And the quality of a road going from that Canberra area all the way out to the freeway, I see a lot of value in that to residents. At great cost too, though. So where do I stand? I'm not sure. But those are my current thoughts.
Can I just make one more point too? Again, I love Lindon. I love the big lots. I really think we're going to see a lot more pressure for infill development, which is going to swell the population and cause more traffic and things like that. Now, whether that happens anytime in the near future, I don't know. But you might have a bigger lot and you might not be interested in it, but your kids might. And so it may be the next generation that is starting to divide these parcels, and the city at some point may have so much pressure, and there might be an appetite to go to quarter-acre lots where people are now living on an acre lot. And so we do have to look at some of that potential infill development and that kind of growth and that kind of taxing of our infrastructure.
Thank you. I'll say my comments and we'll ask questions amongst ourselves and then we'll see if we're ready for a motion. I'm one of those long-term Lindon residents. I was born here. My dad was born here. My grandpa was born here. My great-grandpa was born here. And my great-great-grandpa settled here. So we've seen Lindon from when we were the second house in Lindon. And my guess is I would have loved development to stop there. And I'd love to own all this, in my family. I've seen a lot of change in Lindon over the history of just my life. When I was a kid, there was no such thing as half-acre lots in Lindon. We all had a third-acre or a quarter-acre lot, and then you had 5 acres for your horses. That was standard, or that's what a little bit of country meant to us when we grew up. So, it's, as Commissioner Showers says, I would love to have paused it right after I built my house. I had a beautiful view of the temple, I had this, and then someone down the road built their house higher than mine, and I look into their yard I look into their house instead of the temple. But that's like we said, I think we'd all love to pause the development right when it was perfect for us. Unfortunately, we don't live in an area where that's even possible. And we've been tasked by appointment from the mayor to look forward in Lindon. So when I look up there, I guess from my perspective, what I call Dry Canyon is where we would go and shoot and play and hunt, and that's Canberra. And I would never imagined that was too steep for homes. I remember almost rolling a truck up there because I was trying to get up to go hunting, and we slid down some rock embankment, and now there's homes all over there. So I can see future development. So as trying to be looking forward, I can see a purpose for access to that property. I don't think it's ready to be built now. I don't think we're looking at building it now, but to keep that on the master plan. The other thing that I mentioned is how much time and effort as a city we've put in to develop that 700 North Corridor. And if it develops the way we envision, and we have a hub where people want to come and they want to have entertainment and they want to shop and they want to give Lindon a bunch of tax dollars in that area, they will be coming from, I drive home from BYU every day, and if you come along from Orem Cemetery, all that Orem traffic, and they want to get to that hub, that's the way they're gonna go. So I see a purpose, even if the upper part doesn't develop, for the commercial development. I totally feel the pain of the residents. We had a road that was on the master plan that we were told would never go through on our street. We've had people build thinking they were on a cul-de-sac. And now we have 70 units and a road going through in something that we would consider not Lindon. They're 10 per acre, and they're not. So I guess what I'm saying is I feel the pain of what's going on. And I want to commend all the residents. The manner you conducted yourself today was outstanding. Your thoughts were very thoughtful. They've made me think hard. I think they've made out the whole commission think hard. And so we really appreciate that. So whatever we decide, and we really do appreciate that, and to know our recommendation is going to the city council, and then it's going to be put on the burden of this decision with our recommendation is going to be put upon your elected officials. We're appointed officials to make recommendations. We are here to try to further the purpose of Lindon, and then the real tough decisions go to those who you elect. And so I commend you and want you to come to those meetings and be just as civil and just as thoughtful in your part, no matter what we say, when you talk to them. Because I just want to commend you. I'll honest, I was a little bit nervous about conducting this meeting tonight, so I appreciate that. But those are kind of my development. I think the road, for purposes in the future, could make sense. I agree. Right now, does it make sense to build it right now? No, but I do think there are things that are even projected in the future that could make it very beneficial to the city. So that's where I stand. Any questions we want to ask amongst the commissioners, or anybody want to add anything to your thoughts? And if not, then I'll say, go ahead.
Add to mine. One of the things I've thought about as I've considered this is I've been in some places that are also landlocked or feel landlocked. And the growth doesn't always happen with new builds. The growth happens in existing homes, where you end up with 2, even 3 families in an existing home. And the traffic study, it seems, based on the wording, didn't take into account that. And that concerns me a little about that study, but more than that, I see the need for it potentially, not that it will be built now, but that in the future it could be needed.
Okay.
I wish we could do a better job of articulating why we need it. We just don't have a crystal ball. And I'm not continuing forward because we've got sunk costs in this project. We can untangle what's already been done. That's not an argument to continue forward. So I'm certainly not using that. But I think it's short-sighted, and short-sightedness sometimes is the enemy of government, and it's not. We've got to be better than that. And there were some examples that government was short-sighted that were brought up tonight, and those are very painful to deal with in the year 2025.
Okay. Any other comments? Let me just remind you that the motion is the application was to remove. So an approval will be approval to remove it. A denial will be that you recommend denial of removing it. So just as you're making your motion, it's a little backwards to what we usually do, because usually we're approving things to be put on a plan. But because of the way the motion is,
No, okay. Explain that again.
So as we make the motion, if you recommend approval, that is recommending removal of the street from the master plan. Okay. Does that clarify? Mm-hmm. Okay. If there's no other discussion, I would call for a motion if someone.
Just procedurally, I guess. So if we all were on, we were saying we don't want to remove that, does it go to city council?
Yes.
It still does, okay.
Our motion is just a recommendation to the city council. We do appreciate the mayor's here, a couple of the city council members are here, because they would like to hear the input, and they listen very carefully to what we say, and we appreciate them and what they do to listen. So that's why they're here. They're not here to influence us. They're here to listen to us. So we do appreciate that.
I'll make the motion. I move to recommend it'd be denial of, if I wanted to keep it on there, it's a denial. I move to recommend denial of the applicant's request for an amendment to the Lindon City Street Master Plan map, removing the remaining segment of the future 800 North, 1200 East, Major Collector Street, east of 400 East.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the motion is 5-1 in favor of denial. That means that recommendation with that vote will be moved on to the city council. This is not a final vote or matter. It's our recommendation based upon what we think. Mike, will this be Monday?
Yes. March 3rd.
So Monday, March 3rd, this matter will come before the city council, and we recommend you all come and voice your opinion. And thank you so much for coming.
One of my great concerns is that safety issue that S2. Do I need to make a motion to you to have that considered?
No, that would be.
Work with staff, and if there's something that needs to be taken on or off a master plan, they would work with that. But yeah, so I would just work with Mike and staff about what to do about that. It might they'll be able to direct you in the right way.
So if the developers decided to, so say this is the line right here, and then what if they decided to put houses against the city line? Like they would move the road over into front of those houses, then what would you do with your easement?
I think the developer could buy it, I think these homeowners could buy it, I'd love to see, I've been talking about that for a long time, a realignment if we could.
Yes.
Yeah, I would love to see that, I don't, you'd have to talk to city staff and everything. Yeah, we have another agenda item.
We still have more items.
Sitting up here battling this out, huh?
Thank you for your
Tough
time
duty, huh?
and comments.
Huh? You what? You do, where at?
To take care of all the students' physical housing needs.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay. Commissioners, are you good for us to continue?
Yep.
Okay, we have just two more items. Let's see if we can get through them.
We may just let them know we're still in the meeting.
Yes, so we're going to continue our meeting, and if you'd like to talk in the foyer, if you could close the doors so we can continue our meeting, that would be perfect. Thank you so much.
Closed door meeting, do we?
Well, oh yeah.
I'm just kidding.
This is not a closed door meeting. Okay. We're now moving on to item 5 of our staff report. My computer's died, so I'm going to go paper ways.
Yeah, mine's just about.
This is a subdivision plat amendment for Mazer Academy at 320 West, 600 South. I don't have who's here representing the applicant, but if you're here, if you want to come up and take your seat, just in case we have questions for you.
That is patience to wait that long.
And if you'd sign in. And it looks like Britton's going to present for us, and so we will move ahead with Britton giving us his
Gosh, we
presentation.
apologize to you people.
That-
Yeah, thank you.
That might have been more uncomfortable for us than you.
We're glad to be here.
Yes, we're glad to be here. Yes.
You just wish you'd been first.
You're here.
We might be the only ones glad to be here, but we're glad to be here.
All right, thank you, commissioners, and so this will be sort of a two-part application of sorts. The first part of this is going to be for a plat amendment at the Carl Mazer Preparatory Academy. Back in 2010, it was initially was approved for site plan approval, and a year later in 2011 was it had a amendment for a 2-lot subdivision, and then later amended once again in 2017. So I'll go over a little bit of the history behind this land here, and what you see in front of you is essentially what is being proposed currently for this plat amendment that, of currently. Some things of note that you'll see into this subdivision plat is at this bottom area, there's a certain amount of land dedicated for a future street dedication. That, while it's on the subdivision plat, it's not final, it's more of a placeholder since UDOT and Mazer Academy are still working out the final legal description of that street dedication. However, we will make sure that the street dedication is finalized before giving our final approval of the subdivision plat. Initially, if I can bring this over here. So this is Mazer Academy, as we all know here. It currently has the large area as this subdivision, and this smaller area here that was subdivided during that, I believe the 2011, it was originally going to be subdivided with the intent to eventually possibly sell it off for some commercial use at the time, but didn't end up kind of going through with that. And the other one was that's right, this one is what currently exists here. And you'll notice right here at the upper northwest area, when these Lakeview townhomes were put in, this subdivision plot was amended to allow for some access through here.
But other than that, this is kind of what they are proposing now. They want to combine those two subdivided parcels back into one for the purpose of the site plan that will be presented after this. One of the concerns that we're currently working on is whether or not there's sufficient fire flow capacity for this addition. We did contact the state fire marshal, and
We haven't heard back from them yet. They're the ones, we have to work with them to make sure we have our utilities can provide the right fire flow for the building. And schools are always reviewed by the state fire marshal, and so we're working that out with them.
that's right. And so we made that one of the conditions for in the motion that regarding the fire flow capacity being met before final approval. But yeah, other than that, the subdivision plat itself is not going to be, it's not adding any additional land that they don't already own. It's just more consolidating for the purpose of that site plan. So I'm happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability for that.
Does that just make it one lot now?
Mm-hmm.
So it goes from 3 to 1?
It goes from 2 to 1. You got the front one along 1600, and then the large, if you can go back to the parcel, county parcel map.
Yeah.
So it's all one except for that little front now? Okay.
Yes,
I
so
was
that's-
still thinking it was divided like the soccer field was its own
Yeah.
lot, but it's not. Okay, it's
Nope.
just,
Plot.
And that dedication, for the road dedication along 1600, that's to accommodate the widening. They'll be taking out, UDOT has purchased Terry Marchbank's home, and they'll be putting a turn lane in
Turn lane
there.
there, yeah.
So they're not asking to remove any of these easements that are currently there, the culinary water easement, the cross-access easement. They're just asking to join the lots. Those easements stay in place.
That's correct.
Yep. Yeah, none of these are going to be changed too much for this. They're all going to be pretty much existing already.
is there any concern with the future street dedication of what that's going to come back or that would affect any of the plans?
No, it should be close to what's right here. It shouldn't affect more than that. You guys would probably know better than me, but.
So far,
We've met with UDOT,
Yeah.
and what you have here matches what they've
Yeah.
communicated with us.
It's pretty straightforward.
1600 is gonna be a really busy street for you.
The improvements, though, that you have already been approved and are going, will actually benefit. I think they're great changes that are coming.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff or the applicants?
We've probably, and I apologize, did we
Yeah.
introduce the applicants?
Are there anything that you'd like to add?
Want to introduce ourselves first?
If you'd like to, yes, please do.
I'm Robin Ellis. I'm the LEA administrator at Mazer Prep.
And I'm Joanna Larson, and I'm on the board at Mazer Prep.
Don't you live in our area? Or you did?
You know I did. We moved right before COVID.
Yeah, you used to though, didn't
did,
you?
yeah.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Right where you guys were talking about earlier.
Right, I know, yeah. Okay.
And I'm Tim Gilbert, I'm the director of Mesa Prep.
And I'm Scott Thompson. I'm the grandparent of 2 grandsons that I hope to someday be able to go to Mazer Prep.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yes.
Number 1 high school in the state of Utah.
Okay. Well, other than the few concerns you've addressed, we're, okay, I believe then
I'm ready to make a motion.
I think we're ready for a motion. We don't need to drag this on any longer than we've been here.
I move to approve the applicant's request for preliminary plat amendment approval of the Mazer Academy Plat C with the 6 conditions listed in the 5 conditions listed in the staff report and all items of the staff report.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That motion carried unanimously, and that one doesn't need to go anywhere, so that one is approved. We'll move on to item 6, which is a site plan review. And this is also just administrative here. It doesn't need to go on, so we will go ahead with item 6.
All right, and so the reason for the subdivision plat approval was for this addition that they're making to the Mazer Academy building. What is currently planned for it is going to be, let's go over to the floor plan for this. So they're finding that there's a lot of need for increased capacity for the students that are going in there, and so they're going to be adding some new music classrooms over here to what seems to be on the site plan here. Some additional classrooms, from what I understand, for like art rooms and art classes, that kind of purpose. And then the big one is for this auditorium here that's planned to have capacity for about 800 people to be able to visit and partake in large performance events, mainly geared towards that, some of the music activities there. Some of the things that we were looking at here, so according to what we have under state code, section 10-9A-305, so us as municipalities will have limited authority for approval of what school and charter school facilities might add to their sites. However, some of the things that we can regulate for you commissioners to be aware of are the setbacks, height, bulk and massing regulations, parking, curb cuts, traffic circulation, and construction staging.
It's off-site parking.
Off-site parking, that's right. And so for most of those things, they are meeting all of the expectations of the city. They're meeting the height requirements and the other requirements that we'll look for in the site plan. One of the only concerns that we have as a city is the parking that is allotted for it. Currently planned there is about 175 existing stalls. The addition would bring an additional 45 stalls to bring it up to about 220 in total. Based on the square footage and the land use required for this addition, it would need about 242 stalls. However, there have been discussions that that Mazer Prep can maybe work with the neighboring church to supplement some of that parking. And if not, we have as one of the conditions for approval that Mazer Academy can, we'll work with the city to arrange for additional off-site parking if necessary. But other than that, this is kind of what they are looking at adding here. Mostly a new building, about 4,700 square feet. South.
It's not 4,700 square feet.
Oh, my mistake. This is kind of what the draft of that is gonna be looking like. It's gonna be matching mostly of what currently exists for Mazer Academy, as to not be super stark in difference for that. So we at the city like to see the additions that are being made to the cornice treatments and the difference in elevation throughout the addition here. And here we have some of the 3D renderings of what you might expect to see. If you've ever been to someplace like Corner Canyon High School, that's where I graduated, and kind of reminds me similar to what they have for their their basketball courts, Corner Canyon High School in Draper. So it's kind of gives that similar appearance, but overall we don't see any issues in the design of it and what's being presented. So if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
We're describing it as a new building, but it's actually just an addition to the other building, correct? Because they are joined.
That's right. So they'll be right over here. We have the existing school, and so there will be a doorway to allow for access to the existing facility there.
And so how many people will this auditorium hold?
The maximum capacity has seating capable of 800 seats.
That's a big auditorium.
Big theater. That's my only concern is parking when they do have an event. Because I could see this being used by the community, by everybody else. So, I mean, my issue is the parking. So what, this off-site parking rather than the church? What's your ideas of off-site parking?
The church, we've always entered into, we've talked to their facilities and their stake president at the time, and so anytime we have an event now, the day-to-day stuff is, we always have the operations, so it's just the events in the evenings, and so when we have an event in the evening, even now, the church allows us to use their parking. We're just really good neighbors, and we make sure that it doesn't interfere with any of their calendars. But the off-site parking is another. We would love to maybe even partner with the old Vivint, like solar, that's that parking lot. You know, in the evening times, we could even shuttle back and forth if, you know, we can use overflow or work with the city to help us with those. We have had problems in the past during the day, especially carpool, where parents are parking in the neighborhoods and neighbors didn't like that, and we try to discourage that as much as possible, but as you know, people will do what they want to do anyway, and even though we ask them not to. But for the most part, we try to really be good neighbors, and discourage in the neighborhood. But we'd love to, you know, partner with some of those businesses who are more daytime businesses, and when we do nighttime, we have enough buses with ours that we could shuttle back and forth from those.
So how much parking are they faulting then, if you were to project out how many they need and how many they have?
Our city code would require 240. They're providing 220.
So we're only talking maybe 220.
Yeah, but parking on-site parking is not something we can regulate. We were providing that to you for more information. Yeah. What we can regulate is off-site, and so if there is an issue of capacity, we would ask that they work with us on, you know, if we're receiving complaints, that they work with us on, you know, addressing those and using overflow parking at some surrounding areas and getting leases for those.
So just to clarify, if they were building a theater just somewhere, they'd only be shy about 20 spots for what the city would require, even for an evening performance place like that. Okay. That makes me feel better. I guess when I hear 800 and then 200, I just think of a parking nightmare, you know. But maybe they're like, oh well, most people who come to something like this, there'll be 4 people in a car. They figure all those things out.
Well, I think our parking ordinance is a little outdated, but
I just look at the church next door and go, well, how many people show up for stake conference or whatever there, and they fill it, and you know, they do it in that amount. So I guess they're not showing up as, not everybody, all 800 people are showing up in one car.
Right,
one car apiece.
But that was my first concern, is if there's a play the same night as stake conference, that's going to be a disaster. You know, and so hopefully
That's why we work with the facilities.
If you work very well to make sure that, but then maybe across the street at Vivint, or what used to be Vivint, or whatever, you'll have to make sure that there's either a crossing guard or someone there that makes that a safe
Am I seeing a path or a gate between the
Yes.
church?
I
The
think
church
they go
built
to
a
seminary.
gate for
So
us.
it's already, okay,
Yeah.
so it's
Because
designed to
we
be,
go,
okay.
they built the bump out seminary, so
That-
they just, the students always go through there
Yeah,
anyway.
that back part's the seminary.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'm really familiar with that area because we used to live down there where they're tearing out all the homes. Not ours was back in a little ways. But with the amount of traffic on that road, you're not concerned with people getting in and out of there with all that
Well,
traffic.
with adding
all
the other
additional
egress
traffic.
that, down by the townhouses, so we mostly enter on 1600 and exit off of 400. So
Okay.
we do the whole
Well, I
flow,
know
we
when that
direct
was
traffic
added
that way.
because I can remember, it got to be such a problem that you had to add that. But that has solved most of that problem.
And very oftentimes, when it's busy traffic, we ask people to just turn right
Yep.
and not turn left at
Okay.
either location.
Yep,
so
during
that-
carpool
so that-
times.
Yeah, they
Okay.
can move quickly
Yeah.
and get out of the way.
And the way UDOT is organizing the exit is, once it's 2 lanes going each way, it'll force the traffic that's exiting to head west. So
Okay.
you would back up that way. Traffic, I think, is gonna flow even.
So that'll
better.
help you rather than, okay. Yeah, because that road has always been really tricky and it'll carry even more traffic now.
It's tricky for about 15 minutes in the morning and about 15 minutes in the afternoon, and the rest of the time it's pretty flowy.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're a very popular school, so there's lots of people in and out.
Yeah.
I'd like to understand the daytime off-site parking a little better. So with this addition being built and 45 new stalls being added, how many additional students of driving age and faculty will that add to your school?
Additional students by the time, once it's fully built out, we'll have 150 additional students, so 790 total.
But of the driving age?
Of the driving age, probably not. We're adding more of the lower age, so we're
Gotcha.
not adding more drivers and less drive at the higher ages.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I mean, as soon as I could get my license, I
age.
was on it,
Yep.
but it's really, it depends on the student, but they're mostly carpool.
Okay, and then
And there are
faculty?
also a
Yeah.
lot of siblings that go to the school, so adding more students doesn't necessarily add more cars
That makes
each time.
sense. And then faculty?
We'll probably add 10 more faculty.
Okay.
Max.
Thank you. So you're actually reducing the amount of daytime
Right.
off-site parking?
Yes.
Okay.
We don't use a lot of the daytime off-site, and there's some
Already.
students that utilize, yes, some students utilize the church parking now. They park over at the seminary parking lot. They've gotten permission from the seminary teachers. But, so, I mean, we have plenty of parking during the day.
Okay, thank you.
It's gonna be a great addition to the community.
Yeah. Really cool.
We hope
And
you guys
that,
come to see
that
some.
big
Yes.
auditorium, you will probably allow a lot of community events
Yes.
to go on there also.
We would love to partner with that.
Okay.
Hope you'll come to the groundbreaking when that happens.
Yes.
Okay, that would be great. So are we ready?
Is there any other questions or comments? If not, I will call for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move to approve the applicant's request for site plan approval located at 320 West, 600 South with the following conditions. One, if parking is not sufficient for school performances and events, the Carl Mazer Academy will work with Lindon City to arrange additional off-site parking according to Lindon City Code Title 17.18. And then 2, all items of the staff report.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Your motion carried unanimously, both of them. Congratulations. We look forward to watching it go up.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being patient.
To the construction there on 1600,
long
right?
dry meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not all so long.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Take care.
Okay, we'll move on to item 7 on our staff report, which is the planning director report and reports from commissioners. So,
I don't think I have anything for you guys, unless you have any questions for me.
There's a proposal came before the city council regarding 700 corridor. Has he given you any indication when he might come back with you with a?
Yeah, I met with them today. Sounds like we'll have a draft development agreement on Thursday. They're putting an economic development report together as well, having an analysis done on the economics and what that will bring to Lindon. So we're expecting those things, actually, sorry, he said he'd try and get them to us on Friday.
Wow.
And how close to the plan was it to the?
Haven't seen it yet.
You haven't seen it?
I see.
No, haven't seen an
Misunderstood.
updated site plan since, I know the mayor's met with them after their meeting, and so haven't seen an updated site plan, so we'll probably see that this week, end of this week as well.
It's exciting to see it moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that is.
is there,
Well, I talked with you earlier, but I couldn't be to the meeting, but I listened to it several times online, just so I could kind of get up to speed. It is exciting.
okay. Anything else? Anything from any of the commissioners, or?
No.
You
I
guys-
just think it was a really difficult decision tonight. And then Mike Millett came up and made some kind of comment to you afterward regarding the easement when he was standing
Oh,
here.
no, he was just saying that, he said what would happen to the property if the developer put the backs of homes up along the easement there. But that would require PG to abandon their master plan and us to abandon our master plan if they put it right up, put the backs of homes to the city property line. But then all that city property would have to be dealt with.
I mean, that would force the hand of us
But that would
doing
just-
something with that city property, but as
It would
they,
move it over.
as they eloquently said, I think if that's on both master plans, the developer will take advantage of that property.
Yeah.
But,
I wish that he would, and I wish he would do something to work with the people on their
It's the perfect time to do it.
or easement type thing, so that they weren't concerned about him using that easement for
Yeah, a road.
his road going through their along their properties. If the city keeps that on the master plan. That was the really big thing I hedged on.
Yeah.
And maybe,
They can find some
maybe
kind of
something can be
agreement
worked
there.
out on that.
So
I
it
don't know.
doesn't, I just wish it didn't hug those properties. Even as even as the road turns the corner and goes south, it hugs those properties so close. And I know there's a lot of topographical issues there, and you got an aqueduct there too. But if
I
there's
know,
some way
I know.
to push that further to the east, I think some people would be happier.
Well, that's the thing is the details that they were all worried about now aren't gonna be even discussed for 20 years
No,
until
that's
it's,
what I said,
until
it's so
until it
unknown.
actually
It's
goes
so-
up.
Yeah, it's
If,
so-
should the day that ever be funded, then we're gonna talk about the details of sound walls, all
Right.
that kind of stuff. But for right now, all we're really talking about is keeping it as a possibility on the master plan.
Right. But,
Hard.
yeah, I went back and forth so many times, but that was one of my big concerns is him developing all of that and then bringing that road right down to the master plan, our master plan road.
Yeah.
Which you, when I was talking to you earlier today, you said that could happen.
it very well could.
So that was one of my big concerns.
Well, like somebody said, the developers aren't gonna, if there's land sitting there, out of the goodness of their heart, they're not gonna leave it there. They're gonna
They could
utilize it.
sell it.
Yeah.
They're business people. They could
Yeah.
come to some sort of terms with those homeowners, and those homeowners,
That's what
they'll
I
write
would,
checks.
yeah, I wish that could happen,
That would be the best of both worlds.
right. So,
Okay.
anyway,
Anything else, or
we have anything from our mayor?
Just here to learn and listen, you two be quiet and all of that.
You were very quiet.
Both of you.
All three of you, there was
You've
three
got
of
the
you.
Was
real
totally
pressure.
appropriate.
I'm going to say, I only dream of doing it and handling it as well as I heard you guys today.
Well,
As each one of you were
Johnson.
talking, it's like, I gotta be more like Jared, I gotta be more like Brad. Every one of you, it's like, I gotta.
There's a lot of
You did awesome.
significant challenges with it, every which way you look at it, one way or the other. But you guys have passed it to your elected officials, so the heat is off you now. You can sit back and watch us sweat.
And we're gonna come and watch you.
And I would just like to say thanks to staff.
Yeah.
I missed the first attempt at this, and I just heard it was a little more unruly than it was tonight. And I think,
It's really hard.
and I think staff did a great job preparing them, and that they came. Now that it was denied, whether they'll have that same contrite spirit when they come again, I don't know. But I do appreciate. I think there was some preparation there that helped reduce my anxiety as it went on. That everybody was very civil, and that there was organization, and I appreciate the commission for keeping it that way, that we didn't get into word fights with them and everything. That I really appreciate that. So
I think the first time it came to us, we were somewhat blindsided. They just sort of
Well,
showed up and,
absolutely.
you know,
yeah,
so
and
this,
Public facilities overlay, which we thought was a separate item they thought was about the road, but, yeah.
yeah, so just appreciate that. So if there's nothing else, I'll call.
I have something, unless, I talked to Mike on this the other day, unless you feel it's not appropriate here.
Well, I'm not sure what they can do about it. It's more of an enforcement
Right,
thing with
tell
the
'em.
city, but it's up to them.
It's okay, let him go ahead.
With approval from the commission, I'll reopen item number 3 for public comment for items not on the agenda.
is that what it was? It's on item 3?
Yes, public comment.
If you would push the button on there so it goes green. There you go. And then just sign your name in.
Okay. Apologize for keeping you late. My name's Bardell Fox. I live at 165 West, 200 North in Lindon. It's the house right by Lindon City Park. And a couple of years ago, I came here to present when Tag and Go Car Wash went in. At that time, I said, I'm not opposed to a car wash, but I'm opposed to the noise that will come from a car wash because it borders our property and our field that we own, which is it's a pasture, but it's basically 2 building lots. So basically, for the last 2 years, we've lived with noise from the car wash in our yard and in our field. In those 2 years, we've never complained once. I went over once when they were playing music so loud it was vibrating the walls of our house, and I was leaving for work that day, and I didn't want my wife to be in the house all day with the boom. It sounded like one of those cars you pull up to that's booming. And I went over and I said, your music is so loud, it's vibrating the walls of our house. And it was the area supervisor there, and he said, well, according to the laws of Lindon, we have a right to play music this loud, and that's what we're going to do. And I said, well, this is so loud, it's vibrating the walls of our house, it's shaking. And he said, we have a right to do it, and that's what we're going to do. And he had another employee standing by him, and the other employee looked at me and said, I can hardly hear it from where I'm standing. Or he said, I can hardly hear it standing right here, and then he did this to me. And I grew up in Pleasant Grove, and I just thought, this isn't the Lindon I grew up with. But that's not, so I'm just making that case that in 2 years, we've never once complained about the noise, even though we hear it in our yard and field all day. But this is what I text to the owner, I guess on February 15th, I said, for a while now, we've been having noise in our house from the car wash. We haven't heard it like this before. It isn't the noise from normal car washing. It is the loud percussive noise that appears to come from a heavy-duty motor equipment. We hear it in our house from 7:30 a.m. until 8 or 9 at night, every day except Sunday. Yesterday, we heard it until 7 p.m. It is a disturbing noise and makes it difficult to enjoy being in our home. When the car wash is not operating, we have relief from the noise. And I asked, could we talk about this and find a way to stop or reduce the noise? Even a temporary solution would be appreciated. And I said, I'll be available Monday, February 17th. He immediately texted me back and said that he would have his maintenance guy look at it. And he did say, I don't know why you said it's open till 8 or 9 because we close at 7. But anyway, in our house, we hear this noise. It'll start tomorrow morning at 7:30, and I know when it starts, when we start shaking, and we'll hear it until 7 o'clock at night. And then I went over on Monday and talked to the manager there, and I said, you know, the noise is coming, it's in our house now, we can't even, and it's not a loud noise, it just sounds like a diesel truck or a truck is right outside your house idling all day. It's just kind of a boom, 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 boom. And if we hear it upstairs and downstairs. And I went and talked to the manager and told him about it, and I said we would even offer to help pay for it. If there's a solution, all we want to do is help get rid of the noise. And anyway, that's kind of where we're at on it. And Mike did come over the other day to look at it, but it's just an ongoing noise. And then there's another noise they have. The noise comes from their electric. There's an electric motor there. There's two big electric motors, and then these big tanks. They're the air tanks for the vacuum. And when you go up to the air tank, you can just hear the vibration and noise. And the parking lot is like 2 buildings and all concrete going directly to our house. So that's what we hear. And then the electric motors make this really high-pitched noise. And the high-pitched noise reminds me of a factory that blows its whistle at noon. Only it starts at 7:30 and goes till 7. That noise, I've heard it every day in the field for 2 years. It never stops, except on Sundays. And so we're asking if we can get some kind of relief to help them. We've even offered to help pay. We just want to work with him to come up with a solution. So in our house, we can get some ways to reduce the noise. Right now, we just want it out of our house. And to me, it's we thought if we move out, we can't even really rent our house. How do we sell our house with that noise in it? And that's, I could go on, but that's what the issue is. We have this noise, and when I looked at the tank, to me, it looked like an easy solution, really. Just some kind of a barricade could be put up to block the noise from coming. I went to Quick Quack and other ones, and some of them, those big tanks and those electric motors, they're enclosed so they don't get the noise. And it makes it very difficult to live. Well, we can't really hardly live in our house with that every day, but that's what I had.
Thank you very much. That's really hard.
It just, from a planning commission perspective, is there a 7-foot concrete wall?
There is.
Yes, there is. So that's the kind of thing we can regulate.
Yeah, so I went to Mr. Fox's house yesterday during the lunchtime. We went in his house and I couldn't hear it outside. I walked over there around the 2 fast food places, couldn't hear it, but you could definitely hear something when you're inside his house. And so then we walked over to the vacuums and you could hear that same rumbling noise. I don't know what, it's weird. I don't know if it's bouncing off the wall and vibrating into the house or something, but so the owner of Tag and Go, we've been playing phone tag today, but we'll sit down and discuss that and see what can be done with the motor and the vacuum and go from there.
Well, I wonder if there's a way to isolate it. They can't shut down their line, but if they could shut down parts of it to try to determine maybe what really is making that noise.
Well, they have two of them. They got one that runs, you can see
Yeah,
them.
I could show
You
you
can
right, I
I
know
can show
right
them
where
on
it's
an
coming
aerial
from.
photo, right? So you got one tank right here.
Yeah,
And it runs the line for these vacuums. You've got another tank here, and it runs the line for those vacuums. And so, well, we'll see what they can do, and,
Looks like city staff is trying to do what
Okay.
they can to help you.
Yeah, and it's really not our purview.
Alright.
We can control a wall, we can control stuff like that. It's really not our purview
okay.
to do that.
And I can't remember, Mike, but I don't think there's, for that use, there was a conditional use, right? So they just have a permit, and so, I mean, if they were violating the noise ordinance, but I don't think it's loud enough that it's in violation of the noise
we'll
ordinance,
look,
right?
we're looking into all that.
So,
You know, we've even talked about some temporary measures that, you know, we put the wrap around the pickleball courts to try and deaden that sound, and maybe there's some temporary things they can look at, or, and, you know, trying to isolate that and fix it. So Connor's the owner. We've been playing phone tag today, but we'll work on this with them.
I'm bringing it up just, to me, it falls under the nuisance city code about it shall be unlawful for any person to make, permit any unreasonably loud and or disturbing noise in the city. It's not loud,
but it's disturbing.
but if like someone played their phone all day in this meeting, even if it wasn't loud at some point, they would be escorted out.
And I think you're working with the right people at the city.
Okay,
And we're supportive of them working out a solution that will help you.
All righty.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If there's no objection, I make a motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? I have multiple seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Meeting's adjourned.
Which second does Brittany write down? That's what I wanna know.